Good morning. Yes, it is still morning in my part of the world. I better have another coffee. Sip of my coffee to get my senses about me. Because it's Monday morning, 11 a.m. But I hear that in Texas, it is like 8 p.m. And how do I know this? Because ding dong, there's somebody at my door. Who's at my door? It is Mr Andy Timmons. Hello, Andy.
Well, thank you.
How you doing, buddy?
I love a good smattering of applause. Yes, I do.
Yeah,
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, it is 8 in the evening here in Texas, and very glad to be with you, man.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining me. And I see you also have a coffee.
Yes, I did. I felt because you mentioned in one of the promos you did that. Yeah, I'm going to have a coffee and talk with Andy. And it's before I knew that you were in Australia. I thought, oh, he's drinking coffee at night. Well, I'll join him. I'll be up. I'm ready. You know, doesn't affect I can sleep at any time. So I figured, well, I'll have a nice half calf Americano. So as you can tell, I'm already done. It's very sad.
Nice one, mate. Nice.
Oh,
well, I do start to make more sense as the coffee starts to kick in.
I understand that. Yeah.
I'm lucky. My flatmate is actually working from home today, and we have a coffee machine. So if you hear me yell out and say, Nathan, coffee.
It's good to have coffee guy, right? Have your own personal barista.
It is.
Yeah.
It's one of the nicest things he did was get a coffee machine. And, when you first thing in the morning, when you couldn't be bothered making, going through the process, you just press a button and it's just done in no time. Love it.
Yeah, we have the same thing, an espresso, I think it's called. It's pretty good. It's not like making a nice espresso, on the stovetop or whatever. But man, in a pinch, like you say, you're just waking up. I just want to push a button and let's get this going.
Yep, that's exactly what we got going there in the Nespresso.
Spoiled
not
as we are, yeah.
Not at all sponsored by Nespresso. I must mention, though, that the podcast is sponsored by Chicken Picks, ET Guitars, and Summer Cable. So shout out to all those fine people for helping me out along the way. I got some giveaways coming up over on my Chit Chats with Git Cats Facebook group. I'm actually thinking about changing the name. I briefly mentioned that to you off air.
Yeah, I thought it was Guitar Cats, though.
No,
Chit Chats with Guitar.
Chit Chats with Git Cats. But
I got that. Does make more sense rhythmically, but at the same time, yeah, you need guitar in there, man.
I do. I for search engine optimization.
That's
purposes,
optimization for sure.
Yeah.
For any potential Nespresso sponsorship, they're going to want to see that too. So we just throwing that out there, Nespresso.
That would be nice.
AndyTimmons.com, Nespresso. It'd be great to have a coffee endorsement. That would be pretty awesome.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah. Tour sponsored by, podcast
people
sponsored
get
by
beer companies and the like. And
yeah, I'd much rather promote coffee than beer. So not me personally, whatever your thing is.
So Andy, I did warn you that I don't have any questions prepared.
Perfect.
Yeah. I have a blank slate, a little whiteboard here that tells me what episode we're on and who my guest is, just in case I get up there and go, "Hello, Cleveland," and I'm not in
right
Cleveland.
On. No, let's float with it, man.
Yeah, but I did tell you that I was going to start by asking you what started the passion for the electric guitar for you, mate.
I don't remember there not being guitar. Essentially, my earliest musical memories are music based, and I had an older brother that was 12 years older than I. When I was born in 1963, so kind of a good time to be born as far as rock music goes, right? Because there in 63 and 64, of course, the Beatles were just coming over. I guess they played Ed Sullivan in February of 64. So literally one of my earliest musical memories is of I Saw Her Standing There, which would have been the flip side of, in the States, was the flip side of I Want to Hold Your Hand, which was the first, that was actually the first #1 Beatles single. They'd released 3 or 4 others, but just without much promotion or whatever. But I clearly remember that my favorite part of the song was the instrumental section. I didn't know what a guitar solo was, but that beautiful reverb drain, I don't know note for note anymore, but anyway, that was my favorite part of the song. And so again, with my older brothers kind of buying all those records in real time, all the British Invasion stuff, and there was acoustic guitars around the house. And by the age of, I think maybe 4, I had my first toy, or maybe 3 or 4, my first toy plastic guitar. So it was just a very guitar centric life from the downbeat, essentially. That's mainly because it was around in the household. My parents had a big old console record player, and I remember them playing records all the time, and my brother's buying all the British Invasion stuff. So it was all guitar driven music, and with the acoustics around, my brother's being into it. It was just that sound, And to this day, that because that George Harrison solo on I Saw Her Standing There, it's so reverb drenched. They would have put the reverb on from Studio 3's. They'd have the whatever it was, a storage basement or something with the microphone and the speaker. So I love a beautiful wet guitar sound. I think it's really purely from that experience as a kid.
Nice. And did your brothers play at all?
Yeah. I had 3 older brothers, and we're all 4 years apart. My brother Brian is 4 years older, John 8 years older, and Mark 12 years older. They all dabbled a bit. So there was a line of acoustic guitars in the 60s called Silvertone that I believe they were in the Sears catalog. So a lot of families in the States, there was this kind of standard issue tobacco burst little acoustic guitar, played horribly, but so they all kind of knew a few chords, maybe just cowboy strumming. But I would see that, and then when they weren't around, I'd sneak in their rooms and try to remember, what I'd seen them play. And
what age is that, do you think?
I mean, easily at that point, that we're talking 5 and 6. But even before that, I did get the toy plastic guitar. Like it might have been a Mickey Mouse brand, or there was a series of them because they kept breaking. But my mom would buy me another one from the five and dime store. But I remember vividly that my brother John showed me the one string melody. This is before Smoke on the Water, folks. So this is I'm not just stepping stone. We were talking about your neighbor Louis Shelton. He might have been on this record because he's on Last Train in Clarksville. So this is at the age of 4 or 5. I'm playing this, but here comes the good part. I mean, pretty good for whatever age,
Absolutely.
I haven't gotten much better, but I can still play it. So the bug bit really early. It was just kind of clear that this is something that I really loved. I didn't know it's going to be my life like it turned out to be, but yeah, it was a very big. The music and the guitar was very important from my earliest memory.
Cool. And did you go seek formal lessons or anything like that, or did you just start picking up things yourself?
Yeah. Well, eventually, yeah. It was all kind of self-taught. And I remember my brother Mark taking me to once it was clear I was getting into the guitar, and maybe I think with my first job I bought a pawn shop guitar for $12.95, saved up and bought this little. I didn't have an amp, but I had this little solid body electric guitar. But he'd driven me to a friend of his that had a Gibson SG. And he knew like, bar chords and pentatonic scale. It's like, okay. So along the way, somebody would show me these little bits, and then I just kind of started learning by ear from my record collection. It was initially like the Kiss Alive record. That was a big thing. Once I realized they were tuned down a half step, that was handy to figure out.
Yeah.
But once you had the basic power chord, and Ace Frehley was such a great guy to learn from because he was very simple in his approach, but it was all really great parts and very memorable solos, and very well played. The time was great, and his the vibrato. It wasn't complicated, but that was the beauty because I didn't have a teacher. Again, I was just getting these little bits of information and whatever I might even see on television, Because this is, kids, this is way before internet and really before instructional videos and tapes. We had Guitar Player magazine where you get a bit of, written out music or whatever. But it was really just anytime I could see a guitar player on television or be in front of somebody actually playing, these were the moments of like, okay. So, but by the time I was maybe, my first gig I did when I was 13, which was my own 8th grade graduation dance, right?
Cool.
From Hebron Grade School in Evansville, Indiana. And it was just me and my brother had a friend, the brother of Brian that was 4 years older than I had a friend named Glenn Gore. He would have been, if I was in 8th grade, he would have been a senior in high school. And he'd gotten the gig to play this grade school graduation. It happened to be my school, but he needed a band. He didn't have a band. He just, I've got this gig. So his friend played bass, and my brother told him, said, look, my little brother is sounding pretty good on the guitar. He's playing along with Ted Nugent records and all, Kiss, So that's how I got my first band. And so I got with this. It was a power trio gig. And the bass player sang a little bit, but we're doing Kiss and Rush and Nugent and Foghat to this 8th grade class that would have, they just wanted a disco. and it was all the people that I'd gone to school with. So it was just terrifying.
Yeah.
I was kind of a shy kid to start with, but then here's your first gig, kid, in front of everybody, so, but it was, it was beautiful at the same time. Now I had, my first gig playing in a rock band, it was off and running. So this will, of course, be a long answer to your simple question, but so at that point, we started gigging. We, started getting more and more gigs. And so by the age of 15 and just getting into 16, the band had added members and changed members. But we're now playing bars, man. We got regular, playing 3 nights a week at the Red Baron Lounge at the Holiday Inn on Highway 41, But even by then, it's like, okay, I'm realizing this is my life. I really have no other, nothing else I really felt any passion for. And so it was clear that this is what I wanted to do, but I somehow had the vision that, maybe making it in a band is going to be such a long shot, just because I lived in a very small town and it just didn't seem like even possible. Seemed like a fairy tale kind of thing. But I was reading in Guitar Player magazine about guys like Tommy Tedesco and Carlton, Louis Shelton, of course, and even Steve Lukather, who I was just getting to know about a little later. They were session guys, and so they knew how to read music and could play in any style. So I thought, well, I need to find a teacher, and so that's when. So it would have been about the age of 16 that I found a guy locally in Evansville. His name's Ron Pritchett, and still there, and he just started. Even though at 16 I'm playing well, I'm again playing professionally, gigging regularly, really good solid rock player. But he started me like, lesson 1 of the Oahu lesson series, and notes on the treble string, so I could read, here's the notes. But because he could see I could play, every week he'd also write out, changes to like he'd write out the changes to a standard, and then I would comp for him, and he'd play the melodies. Because he'd written a very brief chord book, kind of the antithesis of the Ted Green massive chord study book, which is a beautiful book. But this is like, here's every voicing of G13 that you'll ever need to use, right? Here they are, and here's the circle of fifths and how to navigate. So here he's basically saying, here's what you're going to need, here's how to navigate, any voicing you're going to need.
Yep.
So it was beautiful because he started loaning me records of like Joe Pass and Barney Kessel and a big Oscar Peterson fan. So he was, and he played in the style of Barney Kessel. So he's a really good jazz player. So he started really kind of broadening my my musical knowledge, and I loved it. It was anything with the guitar. It was like, I want to know how to do that. I've heard a great country track or whatever, or even classical eventually, just if it's guitar, man, I love it. I want to know how to do it. So he was a great guy to get with because he, again, teaching me the basics of reading, but then really kind of broadening my ears, really stretching me. How do these guys know what notes to play? I'm still in the pentatonic land here.
Yeah.
But it was a beautiful. The timing was perfect.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you stumbled on the right guy that taught you the stuff that matters, not just you need to know everything, but just honed in.
No, that's the thing too. And it's funny you say that because there's such an overwhelming burden that a lot of players feel. And once I got into teaching, more recently, now that I have, my own instructional side, and I was doing a few private lessons, that people just kind of come in feeling overwhelmed, like, oh, I need to know all the modes. Because the world of information is on their desktop or in their back pocket every day.
Yep.
But it can be handy. And if you want to explore that, but none of it really matters. It's the really basic stuff. Like you say, you don't need to know everything in the Ted Green chord book. It's handy if you do, but it can be really demoralizing and kind of inhibiting for some people that they just feel, well, I'll never be able to do all that. Mm. Well, you don't have to. And I'll endlessly bring up various blues players, or even Stevie Ray, or Hendrix was certainly pushing boundaries, but at the same time there was just really foundational things that they did exceptionally well and just better than everybody else.
Yeah.
So it's not really the amount of material, it's just how you play. And that it just really defines the player too. It's not the flurry of notes, it's the vibrato and how it lands and how does it feel in the process. This is where, we talked about Lukather earlier. And I think why I really gravitated towards him, and he really is, I think, my biggest influence overall. There was just such a conviction and complete control over note placement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like everything was really in the spot it needed to be, and his instincts are just broader and better than anybody's. It's just incredible. And he'd probably say he got some of that from Carlton, and I hear that because Larry's the same way, and he's another textbook of like every note and nuance is just so sweet with the guy. So
yep.
I know I'm jumping the gun as far as
some of us just know where to place that note.
There's an innate thing, and it is to do with several things. I think the more we communicate, we talk about these things, we communicate about all the various things that make the great player that we either aspire to be or that we appreciate, and the truly great ones. But that's one thing I kept finding is like the guys I really gravitate toward just have really amazing control of time. They don't have doesn't have to be metronomic. It doesn't have to be a perfection thing, but it's an intention thing and an ability to know where that spot is. But that also led me to a way of thinking that, as I reflect on my own way of being in finding those moments in music, but it's the way you navigate the world too. When you're in a room full of people, are you trying to make it about yourself, or are you aware of everything else and trying to find a place that makes sense? You know what I mean? And there's all the different types of musicians. Sometimes, the focal point may just be all about you. Okay, that's all right. But the guys that are really great in the studio or in a really good band situation, it's a huge, deep empathy and an awareness of not just what they're doing and how they're doing it, but how will it affect the overall? If I step in front of that person, well, they're going to have to move, right? Well, what if I step here, they won't have to move? That'll feel better.
Yep.
Yep. So it's kind of a life thing as well as a musical thing. And so I don't know, that's just one of those things that it gets down to deep into the person as well. Is what kind of person is this, and how does that feel? Yeah. And so I don't. So
you're talking about just to jump back a little there. Sure. You were saying about playing your first gig, school dance. Yeah. I totally relate to that. That was me, and I'm thinking back. I know all the gear I had. Most of it was borrowed back then. What type of gear were you using back then? Because I'm seeing you've got some beautiful amplifiers behind you right now, and the tone, it sounds amazing that you're sending us. What were you using back then?
That was a good rig, man. It was the drummer's cousin was a guitar player, and it was kind of in a big local band. So I bought his hand-me-down rig, not rig, but just he had an acoustic 150 head, and two. The brand name was Acoustic, and it was 150 watt or 100 watt solid state head, but two 412 cabinets, and I had a blue Dallas Arbiter fuzz face running into that. And
first
and
gig.
It was and it was an Electro,
two 4x12s,
two 412s, and I mean that's just I didn't know any different. And I had an Electra Les Paul. It was a cream colored maple neck bolt-on neck Les Paul, right? That I bought at it was called ABC Music on Main Street in Evansville. Remember, I paid $300 for it, but it was like the first kind of really brand name guitar I'd ever had. It was just a succession of all these different pawn shop guitars over the years, right? And this one, so I had this job at the Lawndale Barbershop sweeping hair, and I saved my money and got to buy this guitar, right? It turns out, and sad story, a few years later, it got stolen out of the back of my car. I left it in my car when I went to my job that morning, and I never found another one like it. But it turns out those 70s Electra, they're called lawsuit guitars now. It was made at the same factory that made all the Ibanez guitars. So anyway,
you came full circle.
I came full circle there. So I did. A friend of mine was actually a guy named Bill Bush that works with the band Garbage now, but he was on tour in Australia, and I told him about this guitar. Man, when I was a kid, I had this guitar. It got stolen. I've never seen another one. If you ever see, a cream colored Les Paul with a maple neck, let me know. And he found an Ibanez in Australia, and that's when I found out, oh shit, this is identical except for the little bit of the headstock.
Yep.
Anyway, so at least I have a replacement of an Ibanez, but I'm still looking for that Electra. If anybody knows of one out there, I would love to find it.
Very cool.
That hurts, man. When you're because I would have been 16, 17, having your guitar stolen, man. That was a knife like I'd never felt before. But I was in this band with older guys, and we had an insurance policy. I mean, what band in Indiana would have had insurance? But we did. So I ended up getting a brand new Gibson Les Paul out of the deal. So it was a definite upgrade, let's just say. But yeah, I just never got over that. So now I haven't left a guitar in a car ever since. It just always comes with me, no matter what, no matter where I am.
Yep.
Never like, oh, I'll just be a minute. It's coming with me.
Actually,
Always.
now that I think of it, I crossed paths with you at NAMM a couple of years ago, just quickly, and I got a quick photo with you. And yes, you had the guitar on your backpack. And,
sure
yeah, not leaving that one in the car.
It's gonna be attached in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So you were saying that you were playing the guitar back then that was out of the same factory as Ibanez, and you've got your own Ibanez signature model.
That's right.
Did you continue? When did you start playing Ibanez guitars?
That didn't happen until 1991. So when I got the gig with Danger Danger, this would go to about 1988, I think. That kind of came down the pipeline, and that record came out in '89. But it was actually through a guy that was from this area in Texas, a guy named Buddy Blaze, he was working for artist relations for Kramer Guitars at the time. He was famous for having built Dimes, the Explorer with the lightning bolts and the Kiss guys, and the Night Swan for Vivian Campbell. Yep. Well, it was through him that I got that gig with Danger Danger, because Bruno, the bass player, Bruno Ravel, was playing Spectre basses, which was at the time part of Kramer, and they were signed and the record was done, but they were putting a search out for somebody to join the band. A studio guy had done the record, and so anyway, so that was my first big endorsement, was with Kramer right at the beginning of Danger Danger. But then mysteriously Kramer went out of business like a couple years later, for whatever reason, bad management or something, and so, but I was in a pretty good spot, because by then, we'd been on MTV quite a bit and had, at least a certain level of notoriety. So at that point, there's, most guitar companies want to work with artists that have some level of profile, right? So I remember very vividly going to a NAMM show, kind of thinking like, wow, what company would I like to be with? Who would I most like to be aligned with? And I was in a band that was very much a quote unquote hair band, kind of chasing the Bon Jovi tail. But, Ibanez was a company that had Satriani and Vi, and my friend Reb Beach was playing for them at the time, and Paul Gilbert, a variety of just great players. And Schofield had always played that AS, whatever, that 200. So, I mean, that'd be a place I'd like to be. And I'd met the artist relations guy, a guy named Chris Kelly, a couple years before in an earthquake, oddly enough.
Oh, really?
I was at NAMM for Kramer, and I just checked into the hotel, and right after I got my luggage in the room and everything, and maybe I was changing clothes, and there goes the building, and I hadn't experienced this type of thing, California earthquake. And I run out to the hallway, and this other guy in a similar state of undress in the hallway. We're like, man, earthquake. And then it settles down and goes, hey, I'm Andy, I'm Chris, It just turned out to be the artist relations guy for Ibanez. Wow. So I already met the guy. And so when I went to him, I said, man, I'm looking for a new home, He says, well, our program is closed, but I'll see what I can do. And he eventually came back to me and says, well, we don't really like your band, but we like you. He'd heard some of my demos that became my first solo record. So I was already kind of doing, because I wanted to be, on, like the Satrianis and Vi's. I always wanted to be that kind of virtuoso instrumental guitar player. We got when Surfing with the Alien came out, this is before Danger Danger. When that record came out, I was like, man, this is it. This is complete freedom. Guitar is everything. You don't need a singer. Yeah. Write a great song, play your ass off. This makes sense, right? Yeah. But then, so that's when I had formed the Andy Timmons band, and we were already playing in Dallas. But then again, the opportunity arose to join this band on a major label, and I kind of thought this might be my chance. Even though it wasn't necessarily exactly what I wanted to do, it was something I was very equipped to do. And so, and it was in that the time that I was in that band, whether it was maybe 3 or 4 years, I mean, all the childhood fantasies are, we ended up touring, opening for Kiss on a couple of tours. And that was my first concert I ever saw, was the Destroyer tour.
Oh, cool.
1976 in Evansville. So again, in 8th grade, I'm already playing, I'm 13, and I go see this. I'm like, this is it, man. This is, it was one of those things. So to another full circle thing, just to however many years later it was, 16, 17 years later, there I am, opening for these guys, and
Awesome.
just pinching myself, and on the side of the stage, every show I would watch them, It's just hearing Paul start out every night. Hearing these tunes that were my textbook growing up, it was incredible, man. Just couldn't have ever imagined that I would even meet one of these guys, much less be on the road and sharing the stage and hanging. It was great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've got a few friends that have opened for Kiss over the years, and they all say the same thing, just dream come true. They were just
it is.
I mean, it was like they weren't even real. They had comic books and movies and stuff out, and it's like, these guys even real? Wow, we're opening for them.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, especially the guys of my age. I'll be 58 in a week or so, but it was kind of the thing. If you were the right age at that right time, right when they were just kind of when Alive and then Destroyer, and you're in your early teens, it meant a special thing. And I think of course they still, continue to inspire and turn on new people, but it was a special thing about that time. And so, but it was people that were a little younger and a little older didn't always get it. You know what I mean? Sure. Like the older people, like they were too cool to like Kiss.
Yep.
Because they were like, that's a kid group, But no, man, it's heavy rock, man, and it's really great, And I still get a kick out of listening to it, and I'll go through I go through phases my entire life for a while. Like now I'm into I'm listening to nothing but Chopin and some classical stuff, but next week it'll be Kiss, or it'll be back to Beatles, or whatever path I might go down, or it might be West.
Yep.
I love it all, man.
I didn't really get Kiss. I'm 10 years behind you in age.
Yeah.
And so when the whole Kiss explosion happened here in Australia, I was a kid, and they moved on to their disco hits by then. And it wasn't until later on in life that I'd see my friends that were into hard and heavy music. Right. They're all wearing their Kiss shirts, and then I'd hear them playing this cool stuff that would come up in their iTunes. I'm like, who's this? Oh, this is Kiss. I'm like, that doesn't sound like Paul Stanley or Gene Simmons. No, Ace sings this one, or some cool tunes.
His solo record was the best out of all four of them. That he just came out swinging, man.
Yeah,
so that was a pretty sweet period for Ace,
Yep.
So he meant a lot to a lot of players my age, man, for sure.
Yep. So Andy, you've got your signature model, which is very Strat based, but you said that you started out playing the Les Paul copy.
Yeah.
What was the progression from going from a Les Paul with a bolt-on neck and a maple fretboard to this almost super Strat style guitar? What was the progression?
It happened in Miami. I was my first 2 years of college. I was still in Evansville, Indiana. So, like I say, I started taking lessons from the local jazz guy at the age of 16. When I started college, whatever you are, 17 or 18, the local college offered classical guitar as a major, right? So I thought, well, okay. I was looking at maybe Berkeley or Ball State in Muncie, Indiana, because mom really wanted me to go to college. So I thought, well, I can stay in town, keep the band I'm with, still study with Ron Pritchett, the jazz guy, but I'll learn about classical. I knew nothing about classical, but I started going to the library and borrowing the Julian Bream and Segovia records just to get the sound in my head. I auditioned on that Les Paul to get into the classical. I didn't own a nylon string guitar, but got in. I guess they really needed students, right?
Yeah.
But they could see that I could play, but my poor dear classical guitar teacher, Renato Bituri, just took me under his wing and helped me find a guitar. My dad helped me buy this little Dauphin, Dauphin, still have it, little nylon string guitar for another $300 special, which is a lot of money for a kid, but so I stayed with that program for 2 years, but then had the opportunity and was really hearing about the University of Miami, where the Dixie Dregs had formed and Metheny had been there, which I was starting to really get into Pat Metheny, and thought, well, I'd really like to go there because it's electric guitar, it's jazz, forward thinking. And so I got in down there and very quickly got into a top 40 band, to gig around. And so now we're talking, 83, 84. And if you didn't have a Strat, it could sound like Nile Rodgers, it's going to be hard to find a gig. And so I went to a local music shop down there, and the Fender, that was the first year that the Squier got released. So I bought a Fender Squier Strat. Believe it or not, folks, yep, $300. I didn't realize this was such a thing, but I guess all my early good guitars were $300.
Yep.
If only that was still the case.
Yeah.
But it was a maple. It was a black, I love the look of it. It's black, with a black pickguard, a black pickups, and a maple neck. And it's still to this day one of my best guitars.
Really?
For what, I mean, and those, that first year of Squier Strats are really sought after. They're actually going up in value on the web, to the point where I went out and bought, I got a couple of extra backups just to have. But if you find a Squier that the serial number starts with SQ, it means it was made in Japan in 83/84. And a lot of them are really pretty nice guitars. So, but of course, I immediately put black EMGs in it because Lukather was using EMGs, right? So that's when I really started getting the feel for more of a Strat kind of thing, And I just kind of stuck with it over time. When I was with Kramer, I don't even know. My main guitar when I joined Kramer, they had just come out with the Floyd Rose Sustainer guitar. I'm not sure what model guitar it would have been. It's not really a Pacer, but it was just a couple of humbuckers and a Floyd, yep, and the Sustainer unit, which worked really great. But at some point, I had Kramer make me a Strat, and it was literally a parts guitar. It might have been either Warmoth or Chandler parts, but I wanted a guitar that looked like Eric Johnson's 54. Just the classic two-tone burst Strat with a maple neck. Yep. So they made one for me, and I mean a very sad attempt at relicking. We took the body and we're scraping it up, and just looked horrible. But yeah. But it was the neck on that guitar and that particular Strat that really felt home to me. So this is, right after that, Kramer went out of business, and I started working with Ibanez, and they were immediately like, well, we want to build your ultimate guitar. What is it? But at that point, I was just always kind of happy to have a guitar. It was just, I hadn't really found what I felt to be my definitive thing. So they started sending me various models of there. They had the USA Custom, which was a higher end, 24 fret neck guitar, and they were all very nice. I mean, they finally made one for me. I wish I had it nearby me here, but it was just it was like the RG, but just two humbuckers bolted right into the guitar and a Floyd, and that was a great guitar. But at one point, I think I sent them that Kramer Strat and said, "Man, can you make me something with this neck?" So they did a two-tone burst RG body with that. It was like very rounded, and this is it. This is built in 94. This is the prototype that I'm still playing. And it's basically, it's very Fendery in feel. It was very unlike most of the flat radius, wider Ibanez necks, right? This is a more narrow and rounded shoulders and no finish on it. Yeah. So it just immediately feels like a vintage guitar that it really invites you to come play, And so they made this guitar, and that was it. That's just what I'd found.
And you're still playing the 94 prototype. That's
absolutely.
That's it. Yeah.
And I've got I'm grooming one of the factory models, and the factory models are fantastic, because that was the thing. This was a prototype, and they didn't actually make a model of it until 99, and that was a limited run, something like 175 guitars. And then later on in the 2000s, they reissued it, and it's still in production. But that was the caveat for me. It's like, well, if it's going to be my signature guitar, it has to be exactly what I'm playing.
Yep.
I didn't want it for cost or whatever. I mean, yeah, you can have a cheaper guitar, but I didn't want the dishonesty that I'd grown up with certain artists. You'd see them in these ads playing guitars, like, he doesn't play that guitar. There's no way, Yeah. I said, it has to be, my guitar. So there's been several I've found along the way that sound better than this, but I'm just so used to it,
Yeah, yeah.
But I've got one that I'm starting to play a lot more, because this has been refretted. It's 8 or 9 times now. So wow. It's there's only so much a neck can handle. Yeah. So my luthier keeps saying, you should be playing other guitars. Well, yeah, I know. Okay. I'll get around to it.
You're just attached to that one. Yeah. At the time, Ibanez, everything was so metal looking, and they didn't really have much in the way that was more or less a Strat with sharper edges on it is what you've
Very
got
much
there.
so. Yeah.
But when you look at the lines that have come out from them in recent years, yours is very in place with what they're coming out with now, isn't it?
Yeah. It took a while to get there, you know. I think there was a trepidation on their part early on because it was too Strat-like. And I think that maybe somewhere in the company there was pushback and hesitancy for that. But again, here we are now, and now it's the AZ line, right? You know.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's beautiful. I mean, I see no reason to hide the fact that so much comes from Les and Leo. They just got it right so early on. Everything's kind of a permutation of that. Nothing wrong with that, but it's the thing. And I've got a couple finally in my life, you know, for years, I always lusted after having a great old Strat. So now I've got a really nice 1960 hardtail and a 65 Strat that both really sound quite exceptional. They're really great guitars, but I couldn't do a whole night of my music on it. I mean, they're really great for what they do, but you know, I'll never know how Eric Johnson gets that lead tone out of that guitar. That's just a mystery. But this is what does it for me. I'm just taking the best of the history of the guitar and just modernizing it just enough to, you know, to have it where it needs to be for my voice. Because I come from the heavier rock 70s, 80s thing, but I want also the tradition and the ability to go further back.
Yep.
You know, and there's so much of that sound that we all love. And I've got this some pretty dialed to where I can get, you know, some pretty nice Stratty. If I were to be able to play, you'd hear it. But you know, it suits me. It suits me well, and but yeah, when I pick up the old vintage guitar, then there's this other level of beauty too, right?
Nice. And when you came out with your signature model, did you go through different tone woods? Are you a believer in tone woods?
Well, there wasn't anywhere I needed to go. It was an alder body with a maple neck.
Yep, you stuck to that.
It just kind of it was really right. And this was the prototype. And that was it. I didn't really feel the need to experiment much more. It was different enough in that, obviously, with the cruisers, which are actually humbuckers, but kind of single core voice, the DiMarzio pickup. And then originally it had a Seymour Duncan Jeff Beck pickup, which just a friend of mine had said, I like this pickup. I went, okay, I'll check it out.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
And the bridge is what kind of makes a difference on this guitar because it's a beefed up version of the Fender. It's a Trev Wilkinson bridge that Godot now puts out and makes,
and that's a six screw.
Yeah,
Yep.
though I've got 4 in it, and all 5 strings.
And is that
it's just flush the saddles?
Is it set flush against the body? You said you got 5 strings. Does it pull back?
5 strings? No. I got it just a little bit. It was on the deck forever up until maybe about 3-4 years ago because I would always have a separate guitar where I've had set up a bit floating, but I like the stability of having on the deck. So now, but I'm actually lifted it a bit, so I can get a nice, you know, nice bit of float.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to pull up, just barely.
Yep.
Just a little bit. So I can still do a little bit of. I can get away with Train Caparola and not have too much much struggle.
Nice. It does need just that little bit of float, doesn't it? When you're using the bar to get the vibrato. Yeah.
I forget. I used it for years where it was just, but I'd only have the ability to, you know, lower the pitch, which you're really missing out, you know, if you want to get any kind of the vocal expression, you know.
Yep. And you said you've only got four screws in. Do you purposely take
4 out of the 6,
or?
and I will admit it's just that's the way it was sent. I never touched it. It's like it's working fine for me, you know.
Yep.
So.
And the newer versions of your guitar have a roasted maple neck. Have you?
Yeah, love it.
Any difference in tone that you pick up on those?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's a lot of these things are hard for me to define because every piece of wood's going to sound different anyway.
Yep.
You know, the initial models have stainless steel frets in it. I think I'm going to go back to regular frets, though. I've decided I'd rather use my standard fret in it. But I love the feel. I love the feel of it quite a bit, and they do sound great. You know,
Nice. And what type of fretboard radius you got going on there?
I think it's because world's foremost authority on his own signature guitar. I think it's an 11, maybe a 12, but I don't know. But that being said, I mean, I really enjoy the old 7.5 too. You know, so there may be some experimentation at some point.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, just to see what we can do.
Yeah. And are you an avid collector of guitars in general? Do you have a whole bunch stashed away? Or you're like, nah, this one covers most spaces for me?
It's funny because, but the answer is yes. I got more than I need, and it is kind of a hobby as well as the profession, you know. And I'm not like the guy that's out really avidly hunting down and collecting, but over the course of my life, you know, there's certain guitars that were just, boy, I would love to be able to someday have this guitar. Yeah. And a lot of them have kind of come, you know, into my orbit and various crazy ways, like, you know, finally finding a great telly, which happened about maybe, I don't know, 20 years ago. It was at a blues gig I used to do in Dallas at a club called the Blue Cat Blues, at a band called the Pawn Kings. We played every Wednesday night. Whenever I was in town, Wednesday night, we were going to be at this club. And there's this guy that comes up to me one night and says, "Hey, I've got this, you know, guitar in my car. I want to play it." You know, like this happens occasionally. Here, check out my guitar. Yeah. Well, his friend had passed away, and he was helping the family sell some of his guitars, and it was a '68 Maple Neck Telly. And he brought it in and says, "Oh yes, I would like to play that guitar." You know, so I took it on stage, and the pickup was microphonic, and the strings were kind of flapping on the neck. But I arranged to meet the guy the next day at my luthier's shop, and let's check it out. And if I can get this tweaked out, then I'd be very interested. And it's the guitar I record with more than anything. If I go to a session, it's going to be this guitar, that '68 Telly, and maybe an old Strat. I know I've got everything that I need. So those kind of guitars, and like I say, the couple old Strats that I acquired very much later, because of course they're expensive. You know, some of these vintage guitars, and not all vintage guitars are great. You know, yeah. But once you find one, and that was the story with the '60 Hardtail. We were doing a tune for the last record called "On Your Way, Sweet Soul." It's just a real pretty. Ballad where the tone was a nice tone, but we would, you know, myself and my bass player Mike Dane, who was engineering and producing the record with me, we need a vintage Strat. We got, you know, so we literally had 20 Strats in the studio one day. So I've got a couple. I didn't have the '60 at that point, but I had a couple of things, some much later Strats, several Squier Strats, and I had other friends bringing their guitars, and so we had 20 Strats, and we're like, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. And the same luthier that I was telling you about, this Sam Swank, who's a great player as well. He randomly called. He didn't know we were on this Strat search. He says, "Hey, this client of mine just brought in this old Strat. You need to check it out." I'm like, "Oh, great." And so he brings it over. It's the '60 Hardtail. And we plug it in and play it. And we went, "Oh, my God, that's the sound," right?
Cool.
And it turns out it was a guy, it was a client of his that had quite a large collection, right? And so, you know, Sam said, "Oh, he's fine with you. You can borrow it. Just, you know, record the track. He's totally cool with that." But as this is going on, I'm like, you know, I can't let this go. So I call Sam, "Is there any? Do you think he would sell it? Would he part with it?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, you know, if Andy feels that strongly about it." So, but here comes the problem. It was, you know, it wasn't a cheap instrument, right? And the price he was asking was very fair, but I just didn't have like that kind of money, right? So, but I had a guitar I knew I could sell, that I knew I had a buyer for, that'd been asking. He wanted to buy this old Kramer that I'd used in Danger, right? And I thought, man, I hate to get rid of this guitar, but I recognize that I may never find a Strat that I feel sounds that great again, you know? So I was getting ready to sell this guitar that I didn't want to sell. It was this hollow flash finish Kramer that was in the Danger videos. Yep. So this guy was a big fan, and he had some money. He's like, "Okay, I want to buy this guitar." So he kept pestering me about it. I thought maybe I'll let it go, because the guitar's sentimental, but I'm not going to play it like I'm going to play this old Strat. Yep. So right at that moment, there was a royalty check that I received that I wasn't expecting, and I didn't know that I was even owed anything. And it was the exact amount of the guitar.
That's fate.
No,
that's
it
not
was
fate.
No, and again, I don't bring that up to brag or I hope you're receiving this with how I'm telling you, but it was kind of a divine intervention thing. Like, it was like, no, you keep the old Kramer, and okay, we're gonna help you get this, this guitar, and still to this day, I mean, I use it on recordings. I love to play it, and so it was just what a gracious thing that the guy was even willing to sell it, and then somehow, again, some money showed up. That which happens, it's every now and then something will show up like, oh wow, that's nice. I didn't know I had that coming or whatever. And it doesn't happen like that often, trust me. But it was just one of those moments where, well, maybe I can justify spending this money, right?
Yep.
So I was very, very honored, and I feel very fortunate. So other guitars along the way you were kind of asking about, like, have an old Rickenbacker 12-string, being a Beatles guy, right? So I've got an old Rickenbacker and a Gretsch, 62 Tennessean, and the J160E, and I've got a beautiful 63 Texan, which is the guitar that McCartney played on Yesterday.
Nice.
Just great recording acoustic, just beautiful, smooth, very even tone.
Yep.
Not a great for lead work, but for just the good strumming, Beatley stuff, it's just perfect,
So is it a case? Is it a case of
go
you see guitars around that you go, man, that's just a classic that has such a identifiable sound, like a Rickenbacker or a Telecaster?
Yeah.
Are you searching for nice examples of each ones of those, or is it just something grabs your eye and you go, oh, I must have that?
No, it's very much, there's an awareness of like stuff that, oh, that would be nice, because for sessions or just inspiration,
Yep.
That's specifically why those guitars were appealing to me. And when I was able to find, a specimen that sounded good, then I would do whatever I could to horse trade or whatever. And there's a lot of guitars I have, just all the variety of, prototypes and samples from different companies that I've worked with. So and being a bit of a pack rat, but I've gotten rid of some things along the way, like you say, to accommodate other needs in the guitar arsenal,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for future reference, somebody did say in the chat, I just saw it go past, that your current signature model has a 12-inch radius.
Thank you. I told you I might not know, but I did guess. Okay, thank you, historian of Andy's guitars. It's probably on the website anyway.
Probably is. Probably is. Now, you said when you were getting lessons from Ron that no, you didn't say that. You said you got lessons from Ron. It helped you learn the stuff that mattered. But you also mentioned the word intention before, about guys playing with intention. And to me, I did see some True Fire videos of yours a few years back, and you've got that whole thing down of just playing the right notes. And I think that comes down to playing around the chord more than just, oh, we're in D minor, I'm going to play a D minor pentatonic. There's certain guys that just have their head around playing around the chords, and that just lends its way to such beautiful melodies. I mean, people immediately think jazz, but no, I'm thinking Dave Gilmour. Like when you listen to his solos, it's basically the notes of the chord, and he's just passing through everything else to get there.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of thing you learnt from Ron?
Not directly, but I think that started me on the path. Yep. And like I was saying, I literally remember saying to him, how do these guys know what notes to play? And he said, well, just learn the arpeggios, which I quickly did not do. It's like, it made total sense. It's like, if you want to, well, if you just, didn't do any of that. But over the years, I did do it because eventually, the navigation of a 2/5, if you're in the key of D major and you play it E minor 7, A7 to D major 7, it's the thirds and the sevenths, right? And there you hear the harmony. So I think it was through the music I was beginning to listen to a lot more, and I did absorb a lot of jazz from the classic players like Barney and Joe and Wes, but then progressing, to the kind of the Metheny and eventually Mike Stern and to a degree Lukather, but Carlton even on a higher level of that type of awareness. Like you say, yeah, you can. Yeah, we're all gonna. You do that, or you're gonna. There can be great melodies, and that is totally I don't want to call it a game, but it is a bit of that. It's like, yeah, I can be aware of the global scale or whatever's happening, but it's really more about what chord is happening at that time, and how can I allude to that in a melodic way that's going to give the listener the essence of the harmony, whether they hear the backing or not. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's just such great melody can come from that.
So to accomplish that, when Ron said to learn your arpeggios, is that how you view the fretboard? I know everybody views it completely different. Is there a certain method? Are you a caged guy? Are you a 3-note per string guy? Are you all of the above? How do you think fretboard?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't any of that until Miami. And then, there was awareness of positions, and it all kind of seemed to revolve around the pentatonics and the basic areas you might be comfortable with. But invariably there'd be a lot of blind spots where you maybe weren't as comfortable. You've worn a nice groove here, then up the octave. But when I got to Miami, it was the first organizational way of learning I'd ever been presented with, and that was going through the modes. And they were like a 3-note per string. But even though it was supposed to be like, well, this is Dorian, this is Phrygian, I always simplified it. Just thought, well, this is all F major, right?
Yep.
So what it immediately did for me was once I, because part of the curriculum is like, well, you need to have this wired, in all 12 keys and all the different, I guess, we've done melodic minor and harmonic minor and all that. But it just kind of took away the blind spot. So if I just think about a key, I can instantly kind of see the majority. So there's a bit of that going on. There's that having done the work of knowing where the notes are. But I also realized because I was such a visual, oriented player, I'm also seeing the chords as I go by as well. Because there's a lot of information. If you've got A major, well, you know where to go for the third. You know what? So you're going to start seeing all those different inversions of the chords. Not seeing scales at all, because again, because I know, everything that I want to create melodically is, well, is it a chord tone or isn't it? And if it's not a chord tone, where does it want to go? So it's tension and release, right? So if you got this A7 chord and you play a big O, well, it's a D, it's beautiful, but boy, it's going to have to go. It's going to go somewhere. Could go. Well, where'd I go there? So once you put it all together, of course, you've got a scale. But it means something completely different when you're thinking about it that way. And if you're thinking scales and patterns, it can be a great sound. But to me, you need to mix that up a bit, right? So I was getting the scalar things together, but I realized that the players that I was listening to didn't sound like they were necessarily playing scales. Maybe some of the shredders were sounding a bit more scalar. And again, there's a very, valid energy to that. And I love it too. Right. But the ones that were connecting with me, that they had that bit of jazz background to where that navigation was happening. Robin Ford, does it all day long. He had a really, and has this beautiful blues authenticity, but there's more behind it. There's this really very much intentional voice leading going on. And that's what it is. It's all voice leading, well, if this note, then this note. It's there's kind of a logical progression that can happen.
But at the end of the day, I guess a lot of listening involved, huh? And just letting your ear take you there as well.
Well, that's the thing. That's how we develop. In one of my courses called melodic music, I call it our auralect. It was a term I made up just because I hadn't seen anything that really addressed what I was thinking of when they asked me to do a course on melody. So, well, how am I going to explain something that I've kind of developed naturally? Where does this melodic sense come from? But it is definable in that we can intellectually, make a melody, right? Just as we're talking, if we've got a D minor, A minor to B flat. I know if I just play the third of those chords, it's going to sound nice because that's the third of each chord is going to sound sweet. And that's not a bad melody. But what's the intellect of the ear? So I called it the auralect. And what I mean by that is that all the things that we learn, that we take in through our ears and that we internalize and we learn it. And I think when we're trying to create our own melodies or write our own songs, it's invariably being influenced by the things that we've heard. And so when I see Paul McCartney sitting at a piano and whistling something, it's happening very naturally, but it's really, he's just got this huge library of stuff that those guys, talk about John and Paul, they were so great at songwriting because they had learned so many songs. They had this arsenal of ideas and sometimes they unintentionally nipped directly from, but not always. It was just this, awareness of, this is what I'd like to hear because of what I've loved in the past, and I love talking about David Bowie, how he called himself a collector, right? He didn't consider himself that original, but it was just what he was putting together. He was collecting these things that he loved, and then it's going to come out as you. And that's exactly what I think we all do. The longer that we do this on the guitar or whatever your instrument or passion is, eventually, because I loved Ace Frehley, but then I was into, Pat Metheny. Well, what's going to come of that?
Yeah.
It's like, how does that reconcile itself? Well, I'm part of that.
Yep.
It's if all you do is listen to Stevie Ray, you want to play like that. Well, you may be a version of that, but you'd be better served doing what he did, which was he listened to Albert King and Hendrix and Lonnie Mack, and Freddie King. Yeah. He took but to blend Hendrix with some of this stuff, it was just brilliant. And so the variety for me, certainly however I play, it's that, and it's like that for everybody. I'm not original in that way. But so it's that collection of the melodies that you've heard that you've dug, and then maybe you're going to try to create something that's similar to that or of that level. You may never get there, and in my mind, I never do. But that's what's driving it. That's giving me the goals anyway.
Yep. I think having some very varying influences, way out there ones, is the way to develop a new sound.
Sure.
As much as I'm a guitar player, I do love electronic music, and I can remember just hearing Skrillex about 10 years ago for the first time, and just going, wow, that is just like nothing I've ever heard before. And then looking to the guy and go, well, my parents listened to, and he just had all these really way out there influences and rolled them into this sound that was just completely unique. And I think that's the key, isn't it? Just take a whole bunch of stuff, put it together, be a collector, as you said, Bowie said.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And so that's it. And the more authentic you are about what you're really passionate about, not what you think you should be, that it could be, at least back in the days when in the danger days where there was a lot of that, chasing of whatever the trend was, of what's popular or what's going to sell. I don't know. There's no long term in that. You're not going to be happy. You just gotta do what you're really driven to do. In the most authentic way, and then, chances are, you'll find your way in that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do see that we're starting to get some questions building up in the chat room.
Absolutely.
And from various people. Brett Garsett, of all people, is dropping questions in there. Do you know
Hey,
Brett?
Mr. Brett. Who's just a legend,
I see you, Brett. I see you. But I will come back to the questions.
I'm ready for my lessons, Brett. All right.
Well, he's asking about how you do stuff. So it's funny how it all works. The Mutual Respect Club.
He's amazing.
But I want to ask you about some of the gear you're playing through, because you're
Sure.
feeding a really nice sound to me. And I'm just looking
Thank you.
behind there. I can see you've got a Mesa and a Vox. What is your signal chain right now?
The main signal chain is actually this. There's a Lone Star head behind me, and that's I'm just running into the clean channel of that, and then the timeline delay is splitting in the stereo. So unfortunately, I don't think you have stereo out there.
No, I don't.
I'm slaving into the other Mesa Boogie here. So it's basically a couple of clean Mesa amps, and then I've just got a variety of pedals in front of all that, right? So the sound you're hearing now is I have a signature Carl Martin compressor that is essentially really a clean boost more than a compressor for me, because I've got the compression is all the way off, and I've got the level on it, the volume considerably hot. So right now, if I take off the compressor, it's quite a volume boost. So I'm really hitting the front end of the amp pretty hard. And in front of the Carl Martin, I've got an exotic RC boost, which here's just the compressor without the RC boost. So just straight up clean. And if I turn on the RC, I'm using it to carve out a bit of the low end, because the Lone Star is a pretty bass heavy amp. So I'm carving out some of the low end and adding a little treble just to get a little bit of. So you can get that. If I want to pick up underneath the string, I get a nice bite. And so after that, it's like a series of pedals trying to get the same sound, but they're all just slight, different, varying degrees. So now I'm going to turn on a channel that's got a Keeley modded blues driver, Boss. So not too different, but here's the Carl Martin and the RC. But now here's the blues driver, adding a little bit more gain. But then I've got an MXR 6-band EQ carving a little of the low end out, because the blues driver is kind of a bass heavy pedal. It's good for chords, but I'm backed off the volume, and that's how I use it a lot. Is if I'm full on, but when I back off my volume knob, there's the sound. So that's kind of like you're into a Marshall and you're kind of backing down the volume. That's kind of what I'm going for. I've got a lovely old JMP master volume, but this is just an easier way to get the sound without lugging the Marshall around. I just got a JHS Morning Glory, which I knew that was their most popular pedal, but I'd never heard it.
Okay.
And then when I was looking for one, I couldn't find one because they were all sold out, but I finally got one. Again, similar tone, but it's just a different flavor. And then here's the exotic BB preamp. My used to be a signature pedal. So in the scope of a performance, I'll go to whichever one is just the right feel for the moment. And then here is my main lead sound is just I have a signature JHS pedal called the AT. It's the at sign, you know. So here's the amp.
Nice.
It's like I know that if I have just that pedal and my delay, I can walk in and plug into anything. Of course, I love my Lone Star, and that's what I've got all this gear towards. But I love that pedal a lot. I don't use a lot of chorus, but I have a friend, Simon Fraser Clark, that's with the Laney Company, who I used to endorse their amps years ago. He's made a lovely chorus pedal called the Spiral Array. The company's called the Black Country Customs, and it's basically like the old CE1. Very nice vintage analog. Pretty much it. I can't turn it off. I'm using a dual delay on the timeline, which is basically emulating. I used to use two old Electro Harmonics Memory Man analog echoes, feeding each other, so it would get the dual delay with some nice modulation. So I've been using the timeline to get an approximation of that sound, which is, I guess, all of it's emulating the old EP3 tape echoes. But I'm actually working on a signature delay that I can't quite divulge yet. But we're nailing it. So I'm gonna have my own signature delay coming out later this year.
Great.
But that's a big part of my sound. And somebody pointed out to me, it was a nice way of putting it, is that, well, Andy doesn't really use delay as an effect. It's just part of his sound, you know. Yeah. And that kind of made sense to me because I rarely turn it off. It's just kind of, it's it's like to kind of swim in that sound, right?
So it's just delay. You don't have a reverb after that.
That's the crazy thing. No, if you get things just right, it just kind of creates a reverb in the way that the echo trails blend together. Yep. And so that's there's no reverb. I have a big Sky on my board, but I just haven't used it that much. Sure. I've always kind of used delay as my reverb. Yeah. I don't get specific. Of course, so many units now have tap tempo, and that can be handy for certain types of parts. But I tend to let it just kind of be its own thing, because I don't really want the repeats to be so recognizable rhythmically. Yeah. I just want that ambience, and I call it the halo around the note. Yeah. I want that just. And melodically, it gives you sustain to be able to hold on to a note, and let that be enough where you might be tempted to play more notes if you had a drier sound, right? So, yeah. And so every parameter on that timeline is assignable to an expression pedal, but I use the expression pedal only for the echo, so I can just dial in just the right amount, which again is usually too much. But in the context of a track, though, it can just be this beautiful space that's kind of happening,
Yep, nice.
And if it's dialed in just right, it's never in the way. It's just this enhancing thing,
Yep. So do you have a smaller modeler based rig that you take if you need to do a fly gig or just a small show, or is this what you play through all the time?
It's kind of what I play through all the time. Yeah, I have the fantasy of coming up with a pedal board that's just like 3 or 4 must-haves, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Yep. So yeah, and I curse myself every time I lug this heavy pedal board, for the local gig or whatever. But yeah, sometimes you got to have your stuff.
Yep. So one thing I'm noticing, Andy, is every sound example you've given us so far, you've been using neck or middle pickups.
Except for the hotter lead sound, and that's when I go to the. But you are correct, sir.
So and you've got the rail style pickup there. Mm-hmm. Was that a choice made purely on needing a quiet guitar, or is that those pickups the particular sound that does it for you, or how did you arrive at those?
This is, again, going back to this is just kind of how the guitar was put together. The guy at the time I was working with, Bill Comiskey, who later went to Fender, as we were kind of talking about this guitar, the first prototype, I said, well, I know I want to put the Jeff Beck in the bridge. He says, oh, you need to try this cruiser pickup they just came out with. Just check that out. Oh, great. All right, whatever. And it matched so well with the humbucker, because it is a humbucker, that sometimes having the straight single coil and then a humbucker be hard to really match going back and forth between the two. Yep. It just worked. It was just one of those things like, all right, that's fine. let's carry on. Again, I love the traditional Strat style pickup, and when you have the right one and the right guitar, you can't touch it. But yeah, the noise factor being eliminated is one thing. But then my sound kind of developed around it. It was one of those things where when the right guitar was in my lap, then things just started to navigate a certain way. And now it's very much my sound,
Yep.
It's just, again, it just happened. It just kind of happened. Wasn't like this, I tried 1,000 things. I was never that guy of like, I'm going to wire 20 pickups in my guitar today. Guy is like, no, I'm going to use what I have and just try to play some music. It was always more about that, for better or worse. But it's just that's the honest answer.
Sure. Well, to my ears, listening to it just through the laptop speakers, and it's got that. I love a neck and middle single coil or stacked humbuckers or side by side, like you've got. That bloom around the note, the bull that sort of happens.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing that, but it also sounds a little bit stronger in the mid range than.
Well, that's just it's going to be a little less scooped. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful sound. I had
thank you.
An Ibanez that I'd thrown a whole bunch of things into years ago, and had a stacked Seymour Duncan in the neck position. And that
the hot rail?
No, the hot rails are side by side. This was
I see. Okay,
stacked one. So you only just saw one pole, but it was actually two pickups on top of each other, and that was amazing. People would always comment on just the single coil sound I'd get out of that, but
nice.
noise.
Okay.
And I sold that guitar on the cheap and should have taken the pickup out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, somebody was saying that Eric Johnson had a DiMarzio stacked single coil in his old Strat, but one of the coils was disconnected.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if he has still done that. Or that might just be EJ lore at this point. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, had Scott Henderson on a week or two ago, and he was just talking about all different methods that people have tried of having dummy coils and everything in there.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
wasn't the same, and he uses the Sir silent single coil system.
Okay.
To try and keep those traditional sounds, and I haven't had any luck with any of those. So I've got Kinman in one of my workhorse guitars. Nice. I know it doesn't sound like a traditional single coil, but it's got no noise, and it's a very versatile guitar. So.
Well, that's just it. I mean, again, at the end of the day, we just got to find what you can really get the job done with. But unquestionably, like I say, I all day long, I'll go back to that vintage guitar, and it's going to be noisy. But man, if I've got a specific track to do or whatever, and it's just going to add, this extra layer of beauty, then of course I want to use that if I can.
Yep.
But I can never tour with it. There's no way.
Andy, I'm going to start going back through some of the questions. So, folks,
sure, absolutely.
Now's a good time to start dropping some questions. I try not to keep too much of attention on the chat room as my guest is talking, because...
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I don't have the feed up, so I can't see who's here. So, hello to you.
Okay, so let me see. I'm not going to read out every shout-out because there's going to be plenty of those. Somebody
Unless
was saying
if Paul McCartney's here, please let me know. You never know; he might drop in. Right?
You never know.
Boy,
speaking of McCartney, did Andy finish watching all the awesome stories from the 321 McCartney Hulu show? I don't know what that is.
I've watched 4 of the 6, so I'm almost there. Then maybe that's a friend of mine that wants to talk about it, and I've said I can't talk about it until I've watched all of them. I don't want any spoilers. But it's fabulous. If anybody is interested in anything McCartney or Beatles, it's this wonderful series with Rick Rubin, basically just hanging with Paul McCartney, with multi-tracks to everything, and he's randomly just pulling up songs and getting memories from Paul. And he's pushing 80, Yeah. But he's sprightly and of course I've seen every interview and every snippet and I've been a lifelong Beatle fanatic. But there's still little moments that come out, that he talks about, like, I haven't heard him say that before. That's new, Just a memory of Rick Rubin pulls up the playback of Here, There, and Everywhere, and there's it's very simple, but it's these these beautiful layered harmonies, and he was like, and Paul was like, oh, George Martin, he'd sometimes go to the piano and he'd show us all the parts. We just had to try to remember them. I always had this thing about, well, I figured it was just John and Paul and George kind of figuring out what they were going to do.
Yep.
But there was another level I'd never heard any of the Beatles discuss. Of course, all the orchestration, all the strings, the octet arrangement on Eleanor Rigby, or of course, Yesterday, I Am the Walrus, legendary orchestrations that he would have done. But the vocal stuff I hadn't even thought of or considered, but apparently that he had a hand in that as well.
Wow.
So it's revelatory when you hear these just one little nugget of information that, like, oh wow, like on the Scorsese, Living in the Material World, George Harrison documentary. Paul's talking about George, and he's talking about "And I Love Her." So, and he says, but George says it needs a riff. He'd never given credit to George or mentioned that ever until, 15 years after George's death. But fuck, there it is.
Yep.
Oh, it's just,
and it just makes it.
And of course, then in the 3-2-1, he mentions it again. So it's just nice that if it's even just the littlest nugget could just go, oh, it's so great to hear,
Yeah.
Because it's literally been my life, security blanket, this body of work that it's hard to imagine how life would have been different, without these guys. It's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
So yes to that question.
Have you seen that movie? Is it called Yesterday? Where there's like something happens and all trace of the Beatles gets wiped out.
So this guy, but he remembers all the Beatles songs, so they think he wrote them.
Yeah.
When he does he does that songwriting competition with, is it Ed Sheeran? That's a brilliant scene. But that was a really well done movie, I gotta say.
Yeah.
I went in hesitantly, but I really enjoyed that. I thought it was well done.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Back to the questions here.
Yes.
I'm going to ask one, and I'm going to take off for 30 seconds and come back. Craig Greenfield, also known as Skits, wants to know what was the biggest ever gig you did in memory?
Biggest gig? Now, I wonder, do you mean size of the crowd? I haven't done that many huge gigs. There were some arena gigs when Danger toured with Kiss. So that would have been in 1990. We did some gigs on the Hot in the Shade tour, and in '92 we did some UK gigs with them on the Revenge tour. So those were likely the largest crowds I played for. There was one open air gig we did. It was the Andy Timmons band and Tommy Emmanuel and Deep Purple. It was a big, they call it a blues festival, right? But that was a memorable gig. Only that, of course, just getting to see Deep Purple with Steve Morse as their guitar player, of course. And I had to follow Tommy Emmanuel, and I've got a power trio, and I was horrified because Tommy's just this force of nature, just this he's like easily, may be the best musician I've ever seen. Just not just talking about the physicality of what's happening on the guitar, but just a really amazing, musical force to be reckoned with. And so he just does an incredible set. And then my band goes out. It's actually the first gig on the tour. My drummer's Rob F. Sharon. It was his first gig, so it's a fairly large crowd. And at one point, we go into we were doing our arrangement of Strawberry Fields at that point. Well, I look to my right, and there's Tommy Emmanuel has come down to sit on the side of the stage. And he's just over there, he's rocking out. And I look behind my bass player's amp, and there's Steve Morse kneeling down next to the drummer. So I got Steve Morse and Tommy Emmanuel watching me play this Beatles tune. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going, there's a deli tray and some beers backstage. You guys could go. But it's one of those humbling moments of like, oh man, I better play good, right? This is. So there's been so many gigs that have been big of importance because of whatever reasons like that, where you're maybe playing with or in front of some of your heroes. But those would have been some of the larger crowds, I suppose.
I have a bit of a Tommy Emmanuel story myself.
Yeah.
I won the under 18 section of a best guitarist on the Gold Coast competition here in my hometown. And a few months later, there was a jazz and blues festival in town, and Tommy Emmanuel was playing there. And I got a phone call at work that I had to go and have a photo shoot with him. And
wow.
Cool. And I'm,
what year was this? What year was this?
I won the competition in 1990.
Okay.
And then I got the call. I was working, so 91 that I got the call to go.
Okay.
Yeah. So
wow.
Back then, Tom was really well known in Australia back then, and not really overseas. He wasn't.
No, he wasn't. He hadn't come over yet.
Mm-hmm.
I first started hearing about Tommy Emmanuel from the John Farnham band.
Yeah,
first. Well, after you tell your story, I'll tell you my bit about learning about Tommy.
Well, not much to the story. I go have a photo shoot with Tom. He opens up his case, and I'm like looking at his guitar, and he goes, "Oh, do you want to have a play?" And I'm just a rock guitar player, man. And I just looked at him and said, "Yeah, no. Well, what are you going to play in front of Tommy Emmanuel?"
Valid feeling, man. No, I was the first tour I did with Olivia Newton-John was basically the John Farnham band coming over to the States, and it was actually Brett, believe it or not. We were just talking about, hello, Brett. Brett had another gig and couldn't do the tour because he was also in Farnham's band at the time.
Yep.
So management just put feelers out in the States. Hey, who knows a guitar player? And Simon Phillips with Toto knew me because I'd worked with Simon a bunch. Well, he put my name in the hat, and they called me, and I got the gig. And but they were telling me, "Oh, have you heard this guy Tommy Emmanuel? Oh, you've not seen anything like him, mate." Which sometimes as a guitar player, you're going, "Great, another one." It's like, how bad do I suck now? But then when I finally did see him play, he'd come to a theater in Fort Worth, or just the next town over, and it was just so clear. This is just one of the greatest things I've ever seen, and it was the thing that, if you were to focus on the technical ability of what was happening, you'd go, "Oh my God, that's impossible," and that's so great. But if you weren't paying attention to that, the music was never lost. It was never in service of, "Oh, I've got chops." It was always about, this is amazing music, and and his time is just so ridiculous, and everything felt just phenomenal, And I got to know him a bit over the years too. We've done some things together. There was one music camp, not a camp, but a festival we did in Suave, Italy. It was John Jorgensen and my band and Tommy. So getting to spend some time with the guy, and just what a beautiful soul, and just love him to death, man.
Nice.
Really
nice.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just alluded to oh, geez, another guy, how much do I suck kind of thing.
Well, yeah, don't look at the internet, whatever you do.
Well, you know what? When I ducked off then, I really wanted to hear the start of that answer, and it's like, oh, I missed that. And don't make me go back and watch myself. No.
Oh, no.
So I don't watch these. The only reason I can do these is that I don't watch them. But when it comes to hearing myself play guitar, man, I'm just sick of me playing guitar. It all just sounds the same. And I've started to realize, talking to other players, that most good players are the same. I seriously have an imposter syndrome thing going on, but other people seem to enjoy the way I play, but it all sounds the same. So if I hear somebody else like Tommy Emmanuel, who plays a completely different style to me, I'm just in awe. Just like,
well, of course,
whoa, what is that?
Right. But I think it's so important to be, it's a delicate balance from being inspired and discouraged, right? You don't, because there is so much greatness out there, but there's the ability to learn from it, to be inspired by it. But there's also, the realization that, you can't be them, and being okay with that. And that took me a long time to really get to a place of comfort with that, because I think I had it in my head early on that, like, oh, I need to be able to do everything, as unrealistic as a goal as that is. There's a certain amount of that drives you to get better. It's that unwillingness to just settle with what you got. It's like, well, I'm doing okay, but I know I could be so much better. And I still feel very much that way today, because you do get to the place where, like, oh man, I'm repeating myself, or I'm sounding the same. But I find myself, having gotten more back into a more steady practice regimen over the past 10 years, there would be ruts in various parts of my life where, you may be more inspired than others. But when I really got back into just the habitual, if I just do this every day, it turns out I'm a happier guy because even if I think I suck that day, it's like, well, at least I'm working at it,
Yep.
And you're going to have days where you're feeling okay about it. And some days you're going, man, I just, I need to be working a lot harder. And part of that's just physicality. Part of that's being a human being. It's you set the bar high, and maybe where you're setting the bar, when you're below that, it may still be cool for some people. You've had a bad gig and somebody say, man, you sounded awesome, or you think you have a great gig and they're like, yeah, crickets, nobody's paying attention.
Yep.
So sometimes it's really hard for you to hear the things that you might have that are beautiful but it's so common to you that you're not recognizing it as the special thing that it is. You're too, tapped into what you didn't do the way you wanted to do it, or hearing this guy, that girl, whoever it might be, that are amazing. So it's just finding the balance of like, okay, if I can just consistently honor whatever gift that we have, if I can consistently just try to add a little bit as much as I can, then that's the best you can do, and realizing, okay, I'm not going to sound like Holdsworth. I'm not going to be as great as Lukather, but somewhere with all this, I'll be me, and I'll just be the best version of that I can be. And as long as you're working towards that, that seems to be the real, that's the sweet spot. That's the happy spot for me.
Yeah.
Just making that effort though, and
Yep.
being consistent with it. And that way you can really grow.
Yep. Man, that's some great advice there. It took me years to learn that. I was one of these guys, no, I need to be able to play this or that. And I hear jazz guys playing and going, man, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Country guys, I can't do that. But then I started to realize when I heard those guys try and play AC/DC style rock, that there's just something missing.
It's
and
not
I've
authentic,
got that something that's missing for that style.
There you go.
And if I was to try and learn their style, they'd just probably be having a little snicker going, yeah, you don't listen to a lot of country, do you?
Right. Yeah. But that is the key though. If it's one thing to learn a couple of hip jazz licks, but if it's not really coming from a place of authenticity with the hours of listening, and not everybody's gonna they're not maybe don't care enough about jazz or enjoy it enough to do that. It has to be something you really enjoy.
Yep.
But but even if you're just learning a couple licks, that's cool too. It's just, we all have different, I think, intentions and different goals, and it's going to vary for each person. I can only relate to my experience with, what I've done. Right. But, everybody's going to have their own path.
Yeah.
But that's an important thing though, is realizing that, we don't have to be everything, but just keep working at just the basics. If we just work on a good vibrato, good time, you're going to sound great,
So you mentioned about that, you're putting in some hours on the practice. What kind of things do you practice?
It varies, if I'll use the term practice loosely, but even if it's just playing standards every morning, I love to I have an app called iRealBook. So in the jazz world, there's the famous Realbook, which is basically all the kind of jazz standards. It's just a sheet with the melody and the chords. And this app basically enables you to play. It's like a backing track generating app that, you can choose all the things you are, and you can play it in any key, any tempo, and you can pick different styles of feel. I usually choose the Latin because the fake drums will sound better in straight eighth than they will trying to swing ding, ding, da, ding, ding,
Sure. Or
you can just play with the click on 2 and 4. 1, 2, ding, Did I get the key there? Yeah. So I'll put that on and play for an hour, just have the coffee, just get the fingers limbered up and navigate some chord changes.
Yep.
But there will be times where maybe I'm working on a particular technique or just trying to just work on arpeggios and stuff. It can vary, right?
Yep.
But it's really just I kind of set myself up for a happier day if I just first thing, before getting all distracted with emails and computer stuff, just play for a while. Just start out the day like that. That's a good way to start.
Yep. It's funny.
Yeah.
I had Frank Gambale on a month or two ago now, and he
Yeah.
said that he doesn't really practice. He just plays. Because
Well,
everybody
there you go, yeah.
hoping that he would spill the beans on this practice regime that he does, and he's like, man, I just play.
Yeah. We're hoping for the magic bullet.
Yeah.
But that is it. I never was a good practicer. You know, I didn't have the 10-hour regimen. What was the Steve Vais thing where he had some kind of legendary 10-hour?
Yeah, the 10-hour workout. Yep.
Yeah, but again, you know, you could tell, you know, he's got this structured kind of thing. Both sides of his brain are on fire, right? So, but that was never me. But I had fun playing.
Yep.
You know, and I think every individual's got to pick what's right for them. Some that are like that can really regimented and structured. I mean, clearly it pays off for those that can do things that way. But I was just always playing along with records. That was my main thing.
Yep.
You know, and then obviously when I got into school and I was having to shed particular things like the scales or transcribing, that's really the key. If you can get a lot of playing in, but then learn new stuff on a regular basis. And now there's so many great transcribing apps. But again, we have so much information available to us. You know, you can watch any player showing you how to do the lick, you know, on their, I've got my own instructional stuff too. But when you try to get it on your own first, you know, when you just use your ears, you know, I've got a program I use called Transcribe. You just import the track.
Love it.
It's a great one. It's really easy to fine tune and to raise and lower the speed and all that. And that's really it. I mean, that's how guys of my generation learned. We had a record player and our guitar. There you go, kid, figure it out, you know, and those relationships, because this is an oral experience. You know, if you're learning from a page or somebody showing you, you can get it, but you haven't earned it, if that makes sense. Yep. It's going to ingrain in a much deeper way. Trying to practice what I preach, when I would work with Simon Phillips over the years, you know, when he would send me new music, everything would be, you know, he would have MIDI recorded it. It would spit out the music sheets or whatever. And if I learned it from the sheet first, I was really in trouble because I relied on it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But if I got the majority of it just listening to the track, you know, it just internalizes much faster because you've taken it in through your ears, not your eyes, right? So I think there's a big thing to that where it just kind of ingrains itself in a much deeper way.
Yeah.
You know, orally first and then visually if necessary. Yeah. But again, I'm saying that I love watching I'll watch endless the videos of people showing you the lick, and I'll read the transcriptions too if I can't quite pick it off myself, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, it'll last a lot longer. And I started doing more of that recently too, just going back and learning some West stuff or bits of solos from whoever, just to try to feed some new idea that can open up another door.
Yep. Cool.
You know?
Cool. Back to some of the questions here.
I'm
not so sure how I'm going to go with the pronunciation here. Fabricio Braga wants to know, Andy, I've had a question for years about your tone at the time of Danger. Okay. Could you talk a little bit about your setup used at the time?
Well, it was depending on what era. There was the very first tours that we did. I had a preamp called the Rockmaster from Peavey. It was a custom.
I've heard about these. Somebody told me that they were really cool.
I've got one somewhere. Their electronics designer was a guy named James Brown, believe it or not.
Yep.
Who did a
50 on 50.
And so I had the Rockmaster preamp, but there's also a Triumph. It was a 60-watt head that was modified. So there's a record called Down and Dirty Live. It was an EP that was only provided to radio stations, but that's the tone on that. The first record where I did the two solos, it was a Bradshaw borrowed. It was a Kasha preamp and Bradshaw system. But then the Screw It record was I want to say it was a JCM 900 had just come out. So it was probably like a JCM 900 and a Tube Screamer, something like that. And that tour was I've got it somewhere here. It was a Marshall 3-channel preamp. I forget, it was the 9001 or 9002.
Yep.
Had that and a Tube Screamer and a Peavey Profex. It was like the IntelliFX multi effects, you know. Pretty basic. It wasn't much to it, you know. That was about it. And by the time of the third record, which was called Cockroach, it was a variety of ADA preamp. The rectifier had just come out, and a little Zoom processor. I would use various degrees of those 3 signals for different
all running
sounds,
like
yeah.
in parallel and just bring up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Just depending on what kind of tone we were going to be working on.
Yep.
That ADA preamp is still a great sounding preamp. I tell you what, it's the old MP1 that everybody had back in the day.
I have one right there.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty dang great. Man, I pulled it out the other day and went, well, hold on a minute. This is still great. The clean sounds are impeccable. It's got that solid state and that great ADA chorus in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so there was a tour that Danger did with Extreme back, and it would have been 1990. More Than Words, it was just about to break, but they had that first record out. And Nuno, what a great player, and his freaking tone was incredible. And he had the ADA into a Macintosh, like it's like a home stereo, or it was just a power amp, right?
Yep.
Marshall cabs, and it was Van Halen 1, man. It was spot on, just sounded great. Of course, it's him playing it, right? But
yep.
Yeah, not a bad tone, man.
Yeah, I only just fired it up again not that long ago. I did a quick little YouTube video where I'm comparing it to the Marshall JMP1.
Oh, okay.
The ADA really comes to life with a clean boost in front of it. So before you were saying you were using your compressor pretty much as a clean boost. Yeah. When you're palm muting, it just makes each little just jump forward instead of getting sucked into it. Yeah. If anyone's interested, check out on my channel.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, a comparison video on that.
Sweet.
Some more questions. Brooks Chevelle wants to know, he's about to step into a recording session. Which treble bleed do you use? Is it the Seymour Duncan cap and resistor parallel, or Kinman cap and resistor in series?
I think it's the Duncan. I never do it myself, but I think you can find it on the Duncan website is what we're using. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't know the values. That was the next.
I wish I did. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, mate. Well, you gonna pop it in right before your recording session, man? Quick, give me pass it on the resistor.
It's funny. I do put a treble bleed in most of mine. I haven't really fretted too much about the resistance value and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
But I was very surprised. I was playing a gig, and it depends on the amp. Some amps, you don't need it. I've only just worked this out. Whereas when I was playing a gig just through a little, I got to admit, we're talking about having to haul all your gear around to a show. If I'm doing a small gig, I'll just play through an iPad. And by the time we get asked to do an encore, no, I've already packed up. I'm out the door. But this guitar I have right beside me, my Friedman, let me just...
Oh, nice.
This is a beautiful...
That looks sweet. Yeah, like that. Thank you for that.
Yes, made by Grover Jackson.
Nice. Oh, nice. Hello.
Oops, about to drop everything here. I was very surprised when playing that through modeling software, basically. I was rolling back the volume knob as I do, and I was like, I'm losing my top end. I think something's happened to my treble bleed circuit. And I opened it up, and there was none. And it was surprising. But, as I said, playing through a nice amp, it doesn't seem to affect it that much. But playing it through modeling software, it was really noticeable.
Right.
Huh. All right.
Interesting.
I'll just see what else we have. Question-wise. Someone made the suggestion that maybe I have a clip to play as I peruse for questions. That might not be such a bad idea.
A clip?
Although they said to use a clip of the artist, but I get copyright strikes by doing that.
Oh, wow.
Someone was saying, I saw when that popped up when you were talking about your guitar and how it's been refretted numerous times. Somebody, exactly as you said that, posted that up there. I want to know why the Signature has all single coils and not an HSS setup.
That was debated about with Ibanez. I think we finally thought it was time to have a 3-single guitar. And again, I tend to use the Bucker ones more than I do the one with the 3 single coils, but it was the very first guitar in many years that they would have had with 3 single coils. So I think it was just an opportunity to say, all right, here's if somebody wants a straight up kind of Strat-y version of my guitar, which does sound quite great, I got to say. But We're now going to have a model of the AZ line with the humbucker as well. That's coming up. But I was on the fence about that one because I thought it was a cool idea, but I wasn't sure, if it was gonna fly or not. But it did very well, man. Like, that really was really well received. So I'm very very happy with that guitar as well.
Nice.
But my main lead tone's always going to be based on which is now a DiMarzio. I replaced the Duncan with an what's called the AT1. It's basically a custom DiMarzio pickup they make for me.
Yeah, and is that similar to the JB that you were using?
In origin, but tweaked significantly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm getting close to it. I know that Brett asked a question about your playing. I'm almost at it. Everyone's asking Brett questions. How hard does Andy pick? This is from somebody else, Russell Bannister Music. How hard does Andy pick? Everything he plays sounds so dynamic.
Well, that's your answer. It's varying degrees, right? Because, for dynamic, you have to have... it could be any range. I mean, overall, my technique for full on is pretty aggressive. It's not like... But within any line, hopefully there's going to be, some dynamic, even with full gain. I have a website where every month I add a new song from my catalog, and I go through and teach how to play it. And this is a tune called The Princess. It starts like this. So just in that phrase, there was, there's so many different articulations of different volumes. Like, it turns out that like the second note gets the accent, which is, I don't know why I wrote it that way. It just kind of came out. So just that right there, you can hear there's a shape to it, not just everything's got a... I mean, it's like any spoken languages. We're having the conversation. There's some words that are going to pop. There's going to be some words that are a little choked, a little subdued. There's just this natural flow that can happen in a conversation that ideally should happen in music too, just to give it interest, to keep people drawn into what you're trying to say.
Nice. That's something that I find a lot of the great players that I've had the opportunity to talk to over the last year or so, they all say about the conversation factor of it all.
Yeah, right, of course.
And that's something that I've always been able to hear in other musicians. It's almost like you can hear their intent, whether it's like they're thinking, I'm really good, I can play faster than you. I'm really good, I can play faster than you. It comes out like that. And then you get guys that play. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That's exactly what you hear.
I totally get it.
Yeah, and then there's other guys that you can hear them when they play. It's like, I could cut your head off right now, but I'm just toying with you. And then, when they do finally spit out just a little bit of a, you just go, exactly. I knew that was in there somewhere.
Well, that's a beautiful thing too, to have that kind of reservation and to be able to have that palette to draw from. To us all, not just red. It's a variety of colors, right?
Yeah.
I'm not at that point yet. I'll never be able to do anybody in with chops, but it's nice to have all that to draw from, just to try to have a dynamic to the music.
So speaking of the picking, what pick do you use?
It's small, but it's hard. It's a Dunlop
Oh, there was a "that's what she said" joke in there somewhere.
I was just blobbing that up for you, brother. It's a Tortex Jazz 3.
Yep.
I know the dimension of this, 1.14 millimeter. And it's actually the longest running part of my signal chain. I've been using this pick since 1984.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. There was a music store I was teaching in when I was in Miami one summer. And one of the guys working there, this beautiful guitar player named Amit Chatterjee, said, "You should try this purple pick." And I went, "All right, cool." And I loved it and stuff. So it's interesting. It's a bright pick, and it's got a point to it. So it's not my favorite sounding pick, but I've used it for so long that, I like the sound of a Fender Extra Heavy, or or a thicker nylon pick. But it's just I've developed everything around it because I've played with it so long. It's really hard for me to use anything else.
Yeah.
And I use a bit of my nail. I'm using a bit of my nail and flesh and the pick at the same time. So there's a little bit. So that note there is catching flesh, nail, and pick. So this nail never fully grows. It's always kind of black and, worn away, and there's a bit of the finger that gets. Yeah, but that's
nice. I'm loving that sound, man. You got the bite, but it's not harsh. It's beautiful.
I'm trying.
But unfortunately, that camera of yours, when you held out the pick, normally I have a hard time trying to get it to focus on things.
Oh,
I have to cover my eyes. It's lost focus on your face now.
Okay. Yeah. I think I know how to fix that.
You have worked that out.
Better? No?
Because
I can't. You don't have me on the screen, so I can't see.
That's better.
But there you go.
Oh,
Magic. I can be lighting guy and camera guy as well.
Yeah. You just alerted
Modern
me to
times,
something.
man.
Normally, I know that's fine. I was going to say I don't usually have the guests seeing what's being broadcast, but I usually have them just seeing me. That way, they forget that we're on air. And
that's okay.
Natural. But I just checked that setting, and no, all you can see is me. That's good. I'm back to questions because, speaking of me, there's me. Question from Brett Garsed. How does Andy pick the intro to "She's Leaving Home" without the delay being used? Just unbelievable.
Oh, that's a good one. So the original Beatles recording had a harpist come in and play, and she just played. And then they doubled it. They'd put the eighth note delay on to get. So this track I did a remake of the whole Sgt. Pepper record. So I put the long delay on, but then I just double pick each note. So it's. So I'm emulating that slapback echo that they put on it.
Yep.
But I'm just hard to do slow. Played it in a while. down to practice that one. But that's it. Just it's like alternate picking. All right, Brett. That's my one lick. Now you got to show me how to play slide. Oh man, he's so good.
I love Brett's slide playing.
Yeah, it's otherworldly, man.
It is, isn't it? It is.
Yeah. I'll embarrass him and tell a story I've told before, but I'll tell it here for a new set of listeners. But we were doing a guitar festival in Bucharest, Romania, put on by this lovely Italian friend of ours, Sicilian guy, and but it was Michelangelo and Brett and myself, Greg Howe, Richard Hallerbeek, and I may be forgetting somebody, and I'm apologizing but some really incredible guitar players, you know. So it was a day of everybody doing kind of clinic and playing and performance and chats, but then we're all going to play together at the end of the night, right? And so Greg had his laptop, and he had some backing tracks, but they kept not loading, right? We had nothing to play to, and there's this whole line of guys, and so I just went, or whatever I did. I kick off Little Wing. So everybody plays a solo, right?
Yep.
And Michelangelo sounded really great on Everybody's Burning, and it comes to Brett, and he pulls out the slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was game over, man. Everybody else can just go home now, and just played one of the sweetest solos I've ever heard. Just freaking absolutely gorgeous. So. Yeah.
Absolutely.
A very memorable moment. We had a great time on that. The whole hang was a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's funny, you know, Brett, like his hybrid picking and his legato and everything.
Yeah.
I brought it up with him when I had him on the show last year, just about, there was a John Farnham concert on TV, and every guitar player my age all saw this, and this extended solo he took. Mind blowing. But it's when he puts on the slide on the Farnham solos that the melodies just come out, and you're just like, oh man, if I could play slide guitar like anybody, it'd be Brett.
You know, it's to bring up a point, and I agree about all the stuff that Brett does is just absolutely incredible. There was a moment I had with Mike Stern, who's again, he's one of my biggest heroes, but I've gotten to be friends with him, and we've played together a bunch now, just in, you know, just sitting, two guys playing guitar, you know. And there was this one day I was in New York. I play at this club called the Iridium a couple times a year. And when I'm in town, I'm always calling Mike, and if he's around, he'll invite me down to his place, and we'll play some standards, right? And so this one afternoon, I went down there. My friend Nick Knurk was in town with me. He was just came along for the trip. A really fine guitar player, buddy of mine. So we went round to Mike's place to play, and you know, he's Mr. Vocabulary. He's got all the bebop stuff. He plays all these incredible patterns, but every now and then he'd play some octaves like Wes. And that's when things got different. There was a different type of melody that would happen. You know what I'm saying? It was like, because all the licks went away.
Yep.
All the patterns went away. It's like ear and melody. And it's, you know, it's just something that I do with a lot of students. I'll give them the one string, one finger challenge. You know, first I'll say, we're in the key of A minor, just play, you know, and then you'll get a lot of pentatonic stuff and all the licks, the bluesy stuff they know. Okay, now forget that. You've got one finger, G string, you know, 6 notes. And then they start playing again, and all of a sudden melodies start happening instantly, because you take away everything else, all this other ability you have. Oh, now you're left with your survival instincts, your ear, and okay, what do you want to hear? And it's a really pretty beautiful thing, and that's what slide will do for somebody, and that's what playing octaves. But sometimes it's good to just strip everything away. What's really there?
Yep.
And you're really going to hear the person. That's why, you know, we're you know, waxing on about Brett's thing, and it's a beautiful thing. You know, of course, it's handy to have the chops to do all this other incredible stuff, blow the mind. But when that melody comes out, now we've got a whole nother level of something that's really special.
Absolutely. I did see Brett drop the comment of, that's it, I friggin' quit, after hearing you play this before.
Oh, come on, man. It's a good load.
Now,
well, mutual admiration, man, because yeah.
Nice. I did just find a magic button as you were talking before that allows me to add favorites to questions, and I've just favorited
Oh.
them, and now I can go back and not have to sort and just go straight to the questions. Fabricio, man, you're getting your money's worth today. Andy, why don't you play your old songs nowadays, like Late Night, I Have No Idea, There Before You, Sometimes. I really love these songs.
Oh man, well thank you, Fabrizio. Maybe he's been, because those are songs I don't necessarily have tracks for. So he may be alluding to. I've been doing quite a few shows on live stream on a platform called Stage It, and I started doing them at the beginning of the pandemic. So I've done over 100 shows since the lockdown started.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there was right when things were locking down. That I guess it was March, wasn't it? At least here in the States.
Stage It, you said, huh?
Yeah, so it's a platform where people can log on, and you can set your own ticket price, and I just make it pay what you want. People can literally pay 50 cents to come hang, but some people are generous and pay what they would pay for a regular ticket at a concert or whatever. But so when things shut down, I quickly realized, well, I better figure out what I'm going to do here. And I saw a buddy of mine posting on Facebook saying, hey, I'm doing a show on Stage at 2 p.m., 8 p.m. on this particular day. And I just reached out to him and said, hey, show me how to do this. I need to figure out how to do gigs from home because we're not going anywhere for a while, right? So I quickly got set up, and so from that moment, I did 2 shows every Saturday, almost every week. So again, I've done 120 shows now.
Wow.
Since the lockdown. And so over the course of the shows, and I do 2 every Saturday, and each show would be different usually. But fortunately, over the years with my back catalog, I basically have most of my tracks without the lead guitar or without the vocal. But the tunes that he mentioned are tunes that it's like some of the only songs I haven't done, but I've been playing literally every old song I've got a track for. So,
Yep.
But I like those tunes, Fabricio, and I appreciate you asking. So maybe, I'll see if I can figure out a way of playing those, but yeah, people can find me, almost every Saturday on stageit.com. I'm doing one this coming Saturday. So it's, and I have people from Australia logging on. Of course, they have to get up at all hours because I did the one at 2 p.m. would be what, 5 in the morning?
Yeah, something like that.
So I do one at 5 in the morning, then 8 p.m. Then it's going to be 11 p.m. So, but I have a couple of loyal folks over there that tuning in from whatever hour.
Yep.
But this coming Saturday, I'm doing one at 5 p.m. So whatever that is for you, 8 in the morning. But it's my birthday weekend, so I'm just going to do a set of Beatles where I'm just singing acoustic guitar, get out the old Texan, so I'll do shows like that sometimes too, just completely off the beaten path. And, I'll play a bit of lead guitar as well, but,
nice. So to find you on there, is it stageit.com? Is that what it's called?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And just do a search for Andy Timmons on there.
Andy Timmons. Yeah. And they'll find the shows that way.
Awesome.
But generally every Saturday, it comes and goes occasionally, but that's been a great way for me to, make a bit of a living while we're staying at home, but stay connected to the fans too. And there's a really loyal group of people that come to nearly every show. It's incredible.
Great.
So that's something that I will continue to do even when the tours start back up. It's just something easy I can do from home. Like we're sitting here now. It's why not? It was great during that entire time to have these gigs every weekend to kind of have this, there's plenty of stuff that I could do as far as my own website and whatever session stuff I might be able to do remotely, but you want to play too. Even though it's in front of a camera, and it's really bizarre to put your heart and soul into something and you finish the song and it's like you don't hear anything.
Yeah.
You have people typing, applause in all caps. And, yay. That's what I need. I need something like that. I need an applause app. That's handy. So it's like, but you learn how to navigate it and you get comfortable, after doing it for a while. So, but it's a lot of fun, man.
Yep.
I enjoy doing that. So Fabrizio, I'll work on those. Late Night is a fun one.
Okay, got a question here from Dave Self. Andy, do you have any more collaboration plans with Kip Winger? Your recent She Said cover was brilliant.
Thank you. That's why the old Vox is out, actually. That was, for those that haven't seen it, it's Mike Portnoy, Kip Winger, and Jeff Scott Soto and myself. We did a collaboration video for the David Z Foundation, which was raising money for music education. But so the way the track was put together was pretty backwards, but in that Portnoy he played along with the Beatle track. So he didn't, no click, but just played with along with Ringo,
Yep.
Then sent the track to Kip. Kip played the bass, and they sent me the track, and it was pretty much straight up their arrangement. But then Mike added kind of a jam at the end, went to the double kick and got a little fusiony with it. All right, but so I have an old Epiphone Casino. That's another one of those Beatle guitars that with the P90s. So I got that out and put it into the Vox AC30, turned it all the way up, and it's like that's the sound,
Yeah.
But yeah, I've done. If the guy that asked the question did know, I've done every one of Kip's solo records. Most notably, the first couple. One was called "This Conversation Seems Like a Dream" from 1994, 95. And still to this day, that's one of my favorite records I've ever been a part of. Kip is really a brilliant guy. And if you've kept up with him at all, his classical work that he's doing now is just the orchestral works that he's writing are just incredible.
Yeah, right.
So he and I, we've long wanted to be in a band together. In fact, I was asked to join Winger when Paul Taylor left back in the early 90s. The original keyboard player, second guitar player, left the band. I was still in Danger, so I didn't, I couldn't do it, but I've known Kip and Reb a long time, and we're tight. But Kip's brilliant, man, and I want him to write an orchestral piece for me at some point. So I think we'll do some stuff like that eventually,
Cool.
But yeah, nothing but respect for the guy. He's brilliant.
Nice. I got to say, Winger weren't really a big thing over here.
Okay.
I'd see them in guitar magazines. Always have Kip Winger, but and Reb Beach, of course.
Well, Reb, of course, yeah, very unique player.
Yeah. I actually got to hear a lot more of him later on through the magic of YouTube. There's a lot of things that I'd read about as a kid, but actually got to look up on YouTube years later.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I love Reb's playing. He's somebody I'd love to get on the show, so I'm gonna try and get a hold of him somehow. I can
hook you up. He's a very good friend of mine, man. So I'd be happy to put you to. No, he's one of the great players that you instantly recognize his sound and his playing when you hear him. What he developed his own way of tapping in a very unique and very personal sound, and I think he's just incredible. Yeah, we became really good friends back in the early 90s and really to this day. But they just the Winger band came to town maybe about a month or so ago, and I went out to see him, and we did a little jam. They got me up on the stage to play a little bit. But Reb's he's amazing, man. Really unique player.
Cool.
Yeah.
Mate, I'll talk to you about getting in touch with him afterwards.
No problem.
Just looking at the questions again.
Yeah.
Question from Charles Cillier. I don't know if you've heard of Charles Cillier guitars in Australia, man. Cillier guitars are beautiful guitars.
I like guitars.
And Charles is watching and wants to know, Andy,
Charles?
You used the Cruiser bridge pickup in the neck and middle. Was this a choice because of the increased output or a happy accident?
Yeah. Okay. So now that this has changed, though, the original pickup in the neck position was the bridge, but it was because of that, the increased output. But now I've reverted back to just the neck pickup, and it's because it's a bit brighter, which I realize I like the bridge in the neck, but then I realize I kind of like this it's a little sweeter tone. So this has been replaced. This is not original to the guitar. As you can see, this is a bit yellower, but the age. So it's now a proper neck in the neck position.
And
how ordinary and boring, yeah.
I've noticed for years that your pickguard is broken. You've never gotten around to fixing that.
Well, why would you fix it? I've got some buckle rash. I need to no, I earned it, man. This thing, it was kind of pointy Florentine like the cutaway.
Yeah.
And it started I noticed at one point it was just kind of starting to warp and bend. And then one day it was gone. And I've had so many people want me to fix that. And like, let me make you a new one. It's like, no, man, it's part of its age,
it's the history.
Yeah, I don't want to fix that. I've got a new one over there. It's fine.
Yeah. Cool. There was a do I even read this one out? Can you do some covers of the Monkees? Do you know any Monkees songs?
Yeah, sure.
I once thought that love was just a fairy tale, made for someone else, but not for me. Our love was out to get me, not just the way it seemed. disappointed, haunted on my dream. But then I saw her face. Now I'm a believer, not a trace. I've never done this before. A doubt in my mind. I'm in love. Ooh, I'm a believer. Couldn't leave her if I tried. So written by Neil Diamond, that one.
Oh, wow.
That was written by Neil Diamond. If you listen to the acoustic guitar on it, I bet it's Neil Diamond playing on it because it sounds like that Gibson guitar that he's got. But talking about your buddy Louis Shelton. Take the last train, the clock's failing, I'll meet you at the station. One of the iconic guitarists of all time, man.
And he made that up on the spot, apparently.
So great. So great.
Yeah.
So anyway, no, I'm gonna be like, I already played that one. I'm not your stepping stone. That's a great riff, you know. So Monkees were, you know, they called them the prefab four. But that was America's answer to the Beatles, and they had their own Saturday morning television show. They were huge, man. But those singles were great, really great songs, man.
Just a random thing I remember Louis telling me just over a coffee one day was you mentioned Neil Diamond. The first time Neil came into the studio and he worked with him, he said, "Man, I had to tune his guitar for him. He couldn't even tune his own guitar."
Damn! Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that's funny, man.
Yeah. Okay, G-Man, you got your monkey covers there.
No extra charge, man. Yeah.
Now, I think we already touched on this. Andy, what is your definition of an amazing practice schedule? You already told us what you go through there with practice.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. Everybody's got to kind of tailor to what is best for them. I mean, the goal is more time spent on the instrument. Whatever you're doing, it's fingers on the frets is valuable. So just play as much as you can. I mean, but obviously there has to be learning along the way. So just figure out, you know, just learning little bits every day. You know, I'm always wary of just playing too much scales, right? Scales are a means to learning the guitar, but shouldn't be, you know, the attempt at music. You know what I mean? It's like I say, that's when I learned all the modes and everything, it was, okay, now I've got the roadmap. It's not like, oh, I want to play these scales, but now I can kind of see where the notes are. And it helped me visualize the fretboard in a much more horizontal way, or because, you know, we tend to be kind of positional players in horizontal ways, but now I saw how it all blended together, you know, not just positioned, you know, just in one spot. It's what just all leads together. And I think that helps me find things melodically as well.
You know, we were talking before just about the conversational value. And I guess if you just spend all your time practicing scales, it's like just having pre-recorded answers to questions people might ask you in life, isn't it? And it's going to get very boring really quickly.
It is, and it's not really saying anything. There's not many melodies that I know that just sound like a scale, you know. There's the rare like line from like, you know, Hello, Goodbye. You're rarely going to hear a scale in any music, but that just happens to be the counterline. Hello, hello. I don't know why you say goodbye. I say hello. Hello, hello. You know, they got away with, I can play just the major scale. There you go. You can just see the moment happening. Well, that's nice. But it's extremely rare. So, you know, again, learn and practice the scales to a degree, but practice melodies. Learn melodies to your favorite songs. What melodies do you dig? There's a lot more information that's useful there, you know.
Mm-hmm. And that seems to be a common thing that comes up with the guests, all recommending just learning to play other people's songs. And,
of course,
you know, taking little bits of those, get them under the fingers, and then when you need to express what it is that you want to express, then you've got these little things you can fall back on. You've
got the ideas, and you've heard here's what the greats do, you know.
Yep.
Let me do something like that.
Yep.
Same with songwriting, you know, learn. learn the song and learn the structure ideas from that, and do your own thing with it, obviously. But this is good to have the foundation.
Yep. Before I ask this next question, I'm just going to point out that I'm learning that in Australia we pronounce some things different, and it's Mesa Boogie. Everyone says Mesa Boogie, and I've started saying Mesa, and people look at me weird.
Mesa.
Yeah.
It is like it's odd.
There's a chap in Germany, Thomas Blug, who makes the Blue Guitar Amp 1. You know Thomas?
I know Thomas very well, and I'm a big fan of his playing. He's a cool guy, isn't he?
He's a lovely
great
chap.
guy, great player, great tone.
Yeah. So Thomas pointed out when I had him on the show that there's an Australian term that we throw around called quad box when it comes to a speaker cab, the 4x12. We call it a quad box.
Quad box, okay. Yeah.
I had no idea that was uniquely Australian until he mentioned that, and I Googled it and was like, hang on, every reference to the word quad box comes back to an Australian site. I think he's onto something here. Yeah. So I'm actually going to pronounce it properly here when I ask. Hi, Andy. This is from Russell Bannister Music. If you could only play one Mesa Boogie amp model, what would it be?
Well, the Lone Star has been the main amp I've used since 2005. I've owned some other Mesas that I like quite a bit, but this has just been kind of the one that is the best for me, you know.
And why is that? What's the appeal of the Lone Star?
Initially, it was the lead channel that most types of gain amps, you know, once you get the saturation to where you like it to play, can be a bit bright and buzzy and harsh, right? And this was one of the first amps that came along to like, oh, I'm actually rolling off the bass and adding trebles. Like it was a different thing for me. It was very woolly and very close to what I was going for, and just getting the gain set just right and putting a tube screamer in front of it would be the sweet spot. But over the years, I ended up gravitating towards just really using the clean channel, and it's just like a lovely, transparent, you know, clean tone. The amp comes stocked with 606s, but you can switch it to EL34s and switch the bias, and that's what I gravitated towards because, like I said, it's a pretty low end heavy amp, and the 34s really tighten the low end up a bit and gives a bit bright sparkle on top. The Mesa is a tremendous company. It makes phenomenal amps, but this one was also a very simple amp too. Yeah, there wasn't 30,000 switches and stuff. And
I was about to ask you that whether it was like the rectifier series where you can choose between solid state, valve rectifiers, etc.
Well, it's the same with this. You can choose the solid state or tube, and I like the solid state rectifier. Believe it or not, you think everything tube is better. But it's the response. It's the immediacy of the tone. Too much sponge is not good for me. I need control over as much dynamic as I can.
Yeah.
It can be a nice sound and a nice feel, but again, sometimes for the more dexterous passages or some of the more dynamic things, it can be a little sacrifice there.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned
so that's my favorite. Yeah.
I mentioned that bloom that I'm hearing around the front end of your notes, and I guess using a tube rectifier would detract from that, wouldn't it?
It may. I don't know. It may actually add a bit more bloom, to be honest. But I just, for whatever reason, I just gravitated towards the solid state for just more control over the articulation.
Okay. Okay. Again, pronunciation: Muhammad Iham Basir. Hey Andy, can you give your opinion on Scott Henderson and Alan Holdsworth? Thank you.
Oh God, I mean, we don't have enough time, and I don't have enough superlatives. We'll first start with Alan, and just, it's going to be years before people really catch up to the things that he was doing, and Scott Henderson just may be, one of, if not the greatest guitar players. It just, just always such an incredible tone and vocabulary and sense of melody. And just one of those guys that has just continued to grow over the years. I mean, he started out when I first heard of him, maybe it was the early 90s. I don't remember when he first started getting on the scene, but just always recognized quickly that this is just one of the greatest players, But a big fan of both guys, and just, I'll just stand back and just, enjoy and awe when I hear them play. Both incredible. I was just listening to a wonderful record that Alan's on the other day called Enigmatic Oceans by Jean-Luc Ponty. And some early, that's not the earliest Holdsworth, but he just plays, and there's a few passages where it's, he's known for pretty out there and incredible technical stuff, but there's a few solos he takes that are just the most lyrical, beautiful, heartbreaking melodies you'll ever hear. He was just capable of such a wide scope of sound and application of his abilities. It's, again, just stunning. Just what a unique voice too,
Awesome. I've got another question here from Mike Barnholden. Hello, Andy. What does it take to become successful in the music business industry?
Wow.
That's a big question.
That was a great question. And boy, when I find out, I'll let you know, again, there's so many levels to this question, and what is the music business? What exactly is that? Speaking personally for me, and again, it seems like the actual professional applications are just ever shifting, right? For me, being, it was just getting a gig or getting a band, on a label or whatever it might be. But that goalpost has changed significantly. But realistically for me early on, I think I recognized, and I mentioned it earlier in the interview, where, whatever the ultimate goal was, which back when I was growing up, it was being in a band on a major label. That was just, that was what I had considered. That must be the holy grail. That's, you want to be in the big leagues. That's it. But I thought, well, no, that's not going to work. I need to find something more realistic, and that's where I considered the session work. But basically what ended up happening, as far as whatever career I've had, and I've done just about anything you can do with a guitar in your hands. It was just about, being open to learning as much, the most variety of things that you can do, right? So I was always able to, if somebody offered me a gig, no matter what it was, I would usually just say yes. And then even if I wasn't a country player, boy, I would learn as much country as I could to take the gig, So, for me, it was all about diversification. Because once I joined Danger, I'd already played classical and blues and quite a bit of jazz, and all the rock stuff. So, but Danger came along, straight ahead rock and roll kind of band that, okay, this is full circle for me. It came very naturally, and I was shredding a bit, so it's where I kind of wanted to go. But the same time I got the gig offer for Danger, I had offered to join Tower of Power.
Oh wow!
Which was a whole different thing, because they had come through town, and Steve Grove was a tenor player that I'd gone to Miami with, and said, "Hey, our guitar player's leaving to take another gig. Come sit in." And I went and sat in, and like, yeah, they offered me the gig, but I just had the Danger offer, so it was this fork in the road, right? So all this to say that, once Danger had its run, a lot of guys in bands of that genre, once that couple years of exposure and fame and record deal goes away, what are you going to do? Well, I'd already had all this other experience, so I just went right back into session work, doing XYZ, whatever, then ended up doing the Simon Phillips gig and the Olivia Newton-John gig, which couldn't have been more polar opposite, but two very different sets of chops and abilities of equal difficulty, believe it or not. Not many shredders could go in and do Olivia's gig authentically and well, and I took great pride in doing that, as well as Simon's gig, right? Which is, you couldn't get any more proggy and odd time signature than that gig, right?
Yep.
But I loved it all equally. So for me, success was just realizing that, well, if I can have a guitar in my hands and make a living somehow, and that came from, being educated and well versed enough to be able to plug myself into any situation, but really make it work and make it work on the highest level possible. So I always say to anybody, and all these gigs happened mostly by word of mouth. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any other gig where I actively pursued something. It was all, hey, and I hear you might be good for this gig or whatever it might be. It's because I treated every gig like it's the most important gig I'm ever going to do. Right? If it's playing cover tunes with somebody on the corner pub, or whatever gig it might be, because you never know who's going to be there or who's playing with you that later on might lead to
That's the thing with Simon. You know, he saw me come in prepared for the first time we played together was a big Ibanez jam called the Axe Attack in 1993, NAMM show. It was Sean Lane, Alex Skolnick, Paul Gilbert, Joe Satriani, Reb Beach, Steve Vai, and me. So it was me and Simon Phillips and Gerald Veasley from Weather Report were put together as the core rhythm section, and we backed up each other guy that night. But Simon's deal was like, well, you know, in between each act, I want to play one of my fusion tunes. So I'd never played with Simon, but Bill Comiskey at Ibanez thought, oh, man, I know Andy's not just a danger shredder. He can do this. So he recommended me. So I come in, I have all of Simon's stuff nailed, which is not easy stuff, but also learned everybody else's. Like Satriani couldn't rehearse. So I played all his tunes with Simon. So Simon saw this, you know, and so he thought of me that he needed a guitar player for his band 4 years later. Hey, Andy, you know, why was that? Well, you know, I did this one gig and came in. And then when it came time for, you know, Olivia needs a guitar player, Brett can't make it. Simon's like, call Andy, because, you know, this guy. It's so, you know, your gig may not be with Simon Phillips on the corner, but it might be somebody that later on, you know, might have some gig that's really important and it could lead to other things.
Absolutely.
But it's the thing that I always say, it's like, but even if it's just the cover band gig and it's going to be nothing more, well, do you want it to be okay or do you want it to be great? You know, why not try to make it great? The material deserves that respect. The other players deserve the respect. Hopefully you know, care enough to want it to be great. Why not treat every gig like that? Is that your phone buzzing or is that me? I thought I turned it off. My apologies.
That's okay. I can't hear it.
I'm buzzing somewhere.
That's
but yeah,
okay.
so that, I mean, but these days it's hard for me to say, how do you become successful? Because I really don't know. But something that Elvis Costello said in an interview that I read in maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, that just continue to do what you do and try to make it on the highest level possible. And he was talking about songwriting. So, but it kind of applies is that even somebody somewhere even if it's at the bottom of the ocean, they're going to find it.
Yep.
You know, if you really have something of value and you have something that, you know, is valuable. And these days with the internet, you know, it's the blessing and the curse. Everybody can put a video up, but if you really do have something great to offer, I think that the people will find you, you know, but not to say that you can't actively also beat down the doors. I was just never an aggressive person. I'm still not. I'm not a great self-promoter, but you know, the whole
just say yes. That seems to be a very common thing that a lot of the people I've had on bring up as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great bit of advice to everybody. And you're right. You never know who's watching.
Exactly.
I was playing in a very small club in Surfers Paradise, just down the road from me here, the tourist part of town, a couple of years ago, and I was having a good night. There was nobody there, but I was having one of those nights where anything I could think of playing, my fingers would do it.
Yeah.
And I had a lady come and approach me afterwards and said, "Hey, I work for a management team that works with a band called the Dead Daisies, and they're currently looking for a guitar player. We'd really like for you to audition." And
Wow.
I gave my details. I didn't hear anything, but about a week or two later, I saw that they had Doug Aldrich. I was
going to say, I recognize the name of the band. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, you know what? I don't feel so bad that I didn't get a call. Just the fact that they saw me playing somewhere and said they would
absolutely
find me auditioning.
That's it. You never know, you know. So just always, you know, have that bar set high. Why not? You know?
And also, like you said, playing with Simon Phillips in one situation and that leading on to other things.
Yeah.
I said yes to filling in with a small cover band, playing at a wedding. There was hardly anybody there, but the bass player from that group said, "You were fantastic. You will hear from me again." He was the bass player in a very successful Australian early 80s band called the Uncanny X-Men. A couple of years later,
Nice.
there's a show gets around called Absolutely 80s with the lead singers from a whole bunch of Australian classic bands.
Sweet.
And he called me up and said, "Remember I said I was going to call you one day? Well, mate, we need a guitar player for this run of shows." And I said yes. So you're absolutely right, man. You just got to say yes to all the gigs.
There's a beauty to it.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic, man. Again, like a guitar in your hands, whatever it is, don't have so much pride that you're above it, you know, just be happy you're playing music, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got a few more questions. You still got time to answer some questions?
Let's do it, man.
Yep,
Absolutely.
Yep. From Alex Lopez, can Andy talk about the main differences between the AT model and the AT300?
Oh yeah. I had it here earlier. The AT300. This is another prototype. This isn't quite it. This was one of the lead ups to what became the AT300, but it was kind of modeled after the Ibanez SA guitars in the early 2000s. And so it's a mahogany body with the pickup straight into the body. Eventually I had some really nice inlays put on it. But this is kind of ish. But the main idea was that it was, to be fairly like the dimensions of my 100, but kind of fitting into their SA line that they had. So, but obviously with the rosewood neck. And that guitar was the guitar I ended up using on the record called Resolution. So it's a bit bolder tone. This is obviously a bit more stratty, but with the mahogany and the rosewood board, you're going to get a bit more Gibson-y land of tone, right? And so it really fit the mood of that record, I think. And I still like to use it. This one is a rarity because it's one I had with the Fernandez sustainer put in it.
Yep.
Which, like I say, back in the Kramer days, my first Kramer that I had was the first time I think that a sustainer pickup had been created by it was called the Floyd Rose sustainer.
Yep.
So this would have been 1988, and I used it on that first Danger record. And it's actually a wonderful effect, and I used it, I think, pretty well back in the day. I just got this out yesterday because I did a tune on my Stage It show that required that sound. I thought, I'll dig it out, but I don't think it's working quite up to snuff. So I want to work on that. But the technology is that it only works with the bridge pickup on, and then this turns into the sustainer and drives the string. But I would like the sustainer effect, but with a neck pickup sound. So I want to work on that. I'm not sure if that's been developed yet or not. But that would be more useful for me.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned that maybe the Phil Collins model guitar has that, perhaps.
Yeah,
or
Phil's one. No,
because that's what I'm looking for.
Is still a drives it all. I've got a Sustainiac actually in my Hamer, just sitting over yonder. Okay. And I recently upgraded that. I've got a. I'll go and grab it. Just 1 second.
Yeah, please. But again, after having not used that sound for so long, when I used it yesterday, I was like, oh yeah, I think that's a thing I need to get back into.
Man, this was such a big part of my style for so long in the 90s. Let me just change the angle there so we see a bit more of this. But
sure. There we go. So that's the Sustainiac.
This one is.
Is the Fernandez still being made?
I'm not sure. Now
I don't even know who still makes these units.
There it is.
Yeah.
So that used to.
Oh. So can you have a neck pickup tone and get the drive?
Not at the same time.
That's
when you turn it on, it reverts to the bridge pickup.
That's what I mean. That's what this Fernandez does too. Yeah.
My understanding is that it needs to be far away from the other pickups. You may be able to put it into the bridge position so that when you turn it on, it reverts to the sound being picked up by the neck. Alan Hoover at Maniac Music, who is the guy that invented the Sustainiac, would be all over that.
Interesting.
Yeah, these things are great. I love it, being able to flip a switch and people are just looking at you like, how have you got such amazing control of feedback? It's like, I got a switch.
Yeah, exactly. No, it can be a very, very musical thing. I mean, it can also get away from you and be too much sometimes, but I think there's a lot of potential there.
I love it.
So look for me with crazily sustained notes soon. Go out for a bite, come back. Yeah.
Now, G-Man Music. Andy, how do you mic your amps? Position on the speaker. Now, I'm just looking at your setup there, and I don't see any mics on your cabs.
That's right, because they're in the next room.
Oh.
I'm coming out of both the heads into. I've got two Mesa 2x12 cabs stacked one on the other. This is like the upstairs of my home, so this is like the rec room, and there's a spare bedroom next to me. So that's where the cabs are with a door for isolation. It's quite loud. God bless my family downstairs dealing with this. But
So very, very standard, just a 57, and I'll get it about 3 knuckles away from the grill cloth, just off the cone, just right on the edge of the cone, not on it. It gets too bright for me. So. I mean, I've tried, there's some nice ribbon mics that could be cool in certain combinations. It's just always the 57, though. Cheapest mic wins, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, but the placement makes a big difference. Now, if for my weekly shows and stuff, I don't get too crazy about the mic placement. But when we did the Resolution record and then the theme from A Perfect World, Mike Dane and I would spend a lot of time really getting the placement right and really experimenting with, not using EQ, just finding the right placement and try to keep it as organic as possible. But
Nice.
that seems to work. It seems to work for me.
Yep. I just had Charles Cillier confirm that the Fernandez and the Sustainiac are the same tech. So.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I'm
back to
interested.
questions
to
here.
further my knowledge of that.
Not really gear related. Andy, what is your favorite kind of coffee? The things people
Oh,
ask.
that's a good question. Well, yeah, I'm a dark roast guy. Anything in Italy seems to work really well for me. So it's a long commute, but I don't know how the Italians get it so much better than us, but Yeah, just any dark roast. I love a nice espresso. But I generally have Americanos these days. Get a nice espresso, add some water to it, and I'm a happy guy.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've only got a couple of more questions left there. So,
Sure.
folks, if you do have any more questions for Andy, now's the time to drop them in the comments section as I just go through a couple more here. Hey, Andy, most guitarists have the one music store they use. What is yours?
Who's this question coming from?
PH Productions. The next part of it says, would it be the Guitar Sanctuary? This could be
Of course, it's the guitar. Yeah, the Guitar Sanctuary is like literally, within a stone's throw. It just happens to be my dearest friends that own and run the place.
Well, there you go. So,
I am biased, but it is literally one of the greatest guitar shops in the world. It tends to be more on the upscale. They've got the really nice, the nice guitars, all the boutique pedals, the great amps. My best friend, built the place and owns it, George Fuller. And the guy that he's got in there running the shop, a guy named Brian Meter, is really a go-to guru for me. I've never met anybody as knowledgeable about every piece of gear that comes out. He's just that guy. To me, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Pee-wee Herman.
So long ago.
But there's a scene where Pee-wee walks into the magic shop, which is his favorite place to go, and the guy behind the counter is like, Pee-wee, we've got this new, So I that's me and Brian. Like I walk into the Guitar Sanctuary, hey Andy, have you checked out the? There's so much. Well, you guys know there's so much stuff that gets released that you can't possibly try all of it or keep up with it. But he kind of knows. It's like back in the old days when you would go to the record store, they kind of knew what your tastes were. So if you like this, check this out, right? So Brian is actually he's how I found the JHS line of pedals. He was the guy that recommended the Angry Charlie to me, which I put on my pedal board, start using, and that's how I met Josh at JHS. And I thought, well, let's do a signature version of this pedal, So yeah, and the other thing about it is that it's not only one of the greatest guitar shops, but they've got a 300-seat venue that adjoins the shop. So it's where I do my local shows now too.
Cool.
So it's that's a loaded question. I thought that might have been from somebody at the Sanctuary.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're a fantastic shop, knowledgeable guys, and just really, really sweet people. I'm very biased, but yeah.
Okay, so you just said the magic words then that I was about to ask. You say you're biased. Tube biasing in amps. Is that something you mess with? Do you run your tubes biased hot, cold, or just whatever the tech sets it to?
No, it's whatever the set. I'm just with the Lone Stars. Once I figured out I preferred the 34s over the 606s. It is what it is, and I just dial everything with my pedals basically.
And why do you like 34s over 606s?
In this particular amp, not all situations, but in this amp, like I say,
it's a pretty bass heavy amp. So the 34s are tending to tighten up the low end significantly. What it does to the top end is pleasing to me.
Nice.
I'm able to get that really nice sparkly kind of thing that I like to get with it. In there. Yeah. Again, I wish I could have some high-tech answer to some of these things, but yeah, it turns on and I play through it, and But yeah, those things tend to be seemingly like for the guys, with the, getting all the gain from the amp. Those are going to have, if you're not running the pedals and everything. So I'm just kind of doing things on the front end instead of the back end. Sure. Letting that power section do what it's going to do, and then using my ear to dial on this end what I need.
Yep. There's a couple of more. This first one is more of a shout out more than anything from Barnett Schmidt. It says,
hey, Barnett.
Hi, Rick. Awesome interview. Yes, it is an awesome interview. I hope you like and subscribe and tell all your friends. Yeah,
that's right.
Take that one. Can you please say hi to Andy for me? Hi, Andy from Barnett.
Barnett's a good friend, actually. He and I met one night. I was one of those nights that I was in Manhattan. I had a gig the next night at the Iridium, and Mike Stern was playing at the 55 bar. He quite famously plays this gig. Now that the COVID thing is lightening up a little bit, he's back playing now. But I'd gone to the gig and they accept cash only, which I haven't carried cash in a long time now. So I literally I couldn't get in. It was like, this is so weird. I know my Mike's my friend, but I'm not going to make a scene about it. So I literally was trying to figure out, man, I got to go down to the money machine or whatever. But that Barnett happened to be standing outside because they were waiting for the next set to start. So we just struck up a conversation. And so I told him that, I'm a friend of Mike's. I'm, big fan of his as well. And I'm playing a gig the next night. So Barnett comes to my gig the next night. And he started coming to all my gigs. And now he's been to all my stage at gigs. And he's a really sweet guy that is a guitar student and,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Really, really nice man. So, hey, Barnett, good to see you.
He did go on to say that you have several mutual friends. But he says, additionally, Andy, have you seen the old Sgt. Pepper movie with Peter Frampton in 1974?
It wasn't 74. That had to be at least 77, 78. I mean, chronology. Long story short is I have not. I just never... For whatever reason, as being as the hugest Beatle fan as I am, you'd think that I would get around to sing it, but I just have not. And I'm a huge Peter Frampton fan, and even as much of a big fan of the Bee Gees. I love them so much. But famously, I don't think that movie served any of them very well, right? I don't think it just didn't sit well for some reason. So I've just kind of avoided it for that reason. Maybe someday I'll get around to checking it out. But I'm a huge Peter Frampton fan. My God, he's just one of my favorite players. Yeah.
I did see a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction or something a few years back on TV, and Peter Frampton was in the house band with Steve Lukather.
Oh, sheesh.
Man,
I don't recognize what that might be.
It was some Grammy Beatles tribute, perhaps.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Okay, maybe that's what it was.
Man, Frampton's tone. My God, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I saw him on this most recent tour. He was calling it his farewell tour. I hope he still does some shows, but he's just the top of his game, just fabulous. Just a good guy, incredible. Such a unique voice, and when I say voice, I mean his songwriting voice. Is uniquely his. His the voicings he used, that melodic intent, the R-elect, whatever he has, it's very specific to him. It's really beautiful. And as a player, he's just incredible. Very, very unique, incredible. Awesome. Yeah, great.
Another one from Fabricio. Andy, you returned to Danger Danger in 1997 to record a CD, and later in 2002 for another album with Paul Lane on vocals. How was that experience for you?
Okay, so that's not entirely true. The original band split, maybe it was 93, 94. I made appearances on a couple of CDs. There wasn't really a reunion. In fact, it was just kind of retreads of a few songs that there was a third album that was recorded for Epic called Cockroach that was supposed to come out after Screw It. So that would have been about 93. and a lot of problems started coming in. The music industry was changing. Rap in Seattle had come in, and bands like ours were just basically getting pushed to the side. And so that record, even though it was fully finished and very well received by the label initially, got set on the shelf, and the band ended up losing the record deal. But we couldn't get the rights to the record. So that record didn't come out until, God, I don't know, it might have been 10 years later when Bruno and Steve eventually got the rights to license it from the label. So I never really reunited with the band. The record that was done with Paul Lane was at that same time, because right when things were starting to fall apart in that 93, 94 time period, Ted left the band and sued Bruno and Steve. It's a long drama story, but the label was like, well, no problem, we'll still put the record out, just redo the vocals. That's when we found Paul Lane to come in, and because we'd heard a record he'd done with Bruce Fairbairn back in 1990. And a great voice, and he re-sang all the vocal tracks. So now at this point, there's two versions of the record: one with one with Ted Poley, one with Paul Lane. And again, so when they finally got the rights to release the record, they released the version, the double CD with both versions of the record. So, but I did one reunion. We did 5 gigs, and it was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, and it was good fun, because I had, there was enough time had gone by, and because, even though I'm aware there's a lot of fans of that band, I wanted to, really have my own thing. But eventually, yeah, it was fun to do some gigs, and maybe it'll happen again. We'll see, because I know there's people out there that are just very heavy 80s fans, so I can appreciate that. Yeah.
The 80s seems to be coming back, I've noticed. It's
yeah, maybe.
How can you not notice? But yeah, I see a lot of kids walking around with the mullet haircut. And,
that's incredible.
John Mayer's latest single that I heard, like, could you rip off the 80s any more than that?
Oh, really? I haven't heard it yet. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Well, why not? He would have grown up.
It just sounds like Africa by Toto. It's
cool.
The synth sounds. I believe he's got the same percussionists playing on it and everything, and it's just like,
oh, nice,
man. Yeah, it's like the sound palette of that song, but different chords and yeah.
Well, yeah. But you could see where he's of the age where he probably grew up, and that was an influence on him, that era. So why not?
Yep.
He's done so many things on his own. He's done the bluesy thing and certainly a great pop songwriter. So why not go back and visit some of your roots? If that's what that is, and I'm guessing that's what that is. But yeah, man.
I thought I was down to my last question, which was a ripper from Charles Cillier, but somebody else just snuck one in. Dave C says, Andy was making a tribute song to EVH that he played in a Stage It show. Is it finished and will it be released soon? Very emotive track.
Thank you. And so that's the thing with these Stage It gigs. So frequently, it gave me the opportunity to sometimes write songs in the moment, like the week that Eddie passed away, whenever that was that weekend, I think I played a tune that I wrote. Right now, I don't think I remember it well enough to play it, because sometimes I'll write music so quickly, and if I don't consistently work on it after the fact, it may go by the wayside. So to be honest, for me to play that EVH song, I'm going to have to go back to the Stage It recording and find it and go, oh, okay, that's what I did. Because right now I'm not remembering, and that's embarrassing to admit that. But, there's a lot of tunes that I'll write like that, in the moment, it just happens. And then it's just a matter of whether how do I want to keep working on this or we'll come back to it. So I appreciate the comment about it from the question there. But yeah, I mean, all these things, I'm hoping to get everything released at some point, because I've been writing so much material in the last few years that I can't keep up with all of it, if that's kind of a strange thing to say.
Wow.
But so it's a good problem to have. It
is, isn't it?
The muse has been kind, and but sometimes it can be fleeting. But luckily, there's a lot of documentation because I record all the shows, and there's always demos or voice memos of the writing. So
yeah,
I'll get it all out there eventually. So, but thanks for reminding me of the tune, because I need to get back to that. It might be something I'll enjoy furthering along. But it was certainly emotional in the moment and intended just to be that.
Were you friends with Ed?
I never met him. Never
Never met-
saw him. No, I saw him once, actually, I have to say. But no, we never met or never hung. You know, I really regret that. But I never lived in L.A. and didn't really spend that much time out there. But I saw him play once at an amp show. You know, it was an Ernie Ball night when he was back in the Ernie Ball days it was Steve Morse and Albert Lee, I think, and Eddie. And of course, you know, just it was great to be in the presence of, right? Just
Yep.
Nobody like him.
Yep.
Actually, incredible.
A good friend of mine, his band opened for Van Halen back in like '92 on the Carnal Knowledge tour. Australian group called the Baby Animals, and he's got some ripper stories of.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
really? Okay.
yeah.
I like that band, Baby Animals. They were great.
Oh yeah, great band, still
Yeah.
kicking.
Yeah, great.
And Dave's just an amazing guitar player. I love his playing.
Sweet.
Big influence. But
Nice.
there's a video that just surfaced not that long ago, just after Ed passed, I started seeing it, of Eddie backstage playing a red Strat and just hanging out with Baby Animals and just jamming out.
Oh.
And man, hearing him playing that guitar, and I'm looking at that guitar going, I've played that guitar. I've played that.
Oh, because it's your buddy's guitar.
It's my buddy's guitar. Yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool, man.
Yeah.
That's
and I'm
pretty
thinking
cool.
to myself, yeah, that was before I played it. So damn it, I should have licked that guitar.
Please get some DNA in me somehow. Right?
I had Dweezil on a few weeks back, and I said to him, hey, man, when Dave Leslie was at your place and he saw the Hendrix Strat, hate to break it to you, but he licked it when you weren't looking, hoping to absorb some of Hendrix's DNA.
Oh, that's fucking great, man. I love it. Never thought about licking guitars, but maybe you've given me a whole new idea.
Yeah. Another question just quickly popped in there. Oh, JR Guitar, you got in there very, very quick.
All right.
Just as we were about to round things up. Ask Andy if he still has that electric sitar. I think it was... It was a Matheny tune at Granada Theatre in Dallas. So, yeah, do you still have the electric sitar?
Yeah, sure. There was a beautiful tune. Yeah. There's a tune called Last Train Home, and it's just one of the most beautiful melodies. Yeah, it's a Jerry Jones choral kind of type electric sitar. And it's a beautiful thing, but it's just one of those things you can only use it very sparingly, right? You know?
Yep.
Like, but I do. And so he must have been at that Granada gig. And I actually took it to New York to play at the Iridium too once, but I would too. And there was a tune that I would use it on with Olivia back in the day. And I used it on, I did a pop vocal record in the mid 90s called Orange Swirl. It's used on a tune called State of Mind, but it's one of those things you just use it on one track every decade or so.
Yeah.
But it's a fun. Yeah.
Did you ever go down the road of maybe trying Line 6 Variacs that had all that kind of stuff built in?
No, I never have. I never have, man. But I'm sure they're a useful tool for somebody needing everything in a box, you know?
Well, I did try to go down that road because I was sick of... I was saying yes to a lot of cover band gigs, and depending on who was singing, we tune in this tuning, no, we tune up, we do it in this key. And I thought, if only I had a transposing guitar and all that. I did find that the modeling guitar, it's like somebody doing an impersonation of somebody.
Well, it all is.
You're going to find that characteristic about somebody, and you're going to overdo it.
Right. That makes sense, yeah.
And so, for instance, all the Telecaster sounds were just too twangy. The Les Paul was just too throaty. And the other thing I found was you had a piezo pickup in the bridge, and if you were using the trem and it made contact with the body, this god almighty clunk would come out through your pickups.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
which is something I never thought of.
Yeah. Well, it was I remember somebody having one and going through the it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting that it can do that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I'm still,
if you needed it to have a banjo for a particular song and not have to take it out on the road, it'd work. Okay, so I've been saving one question up for Charles Cillier.
Oh,
now,
dear.
actually, speaking of those Line 6 Variaxes, Charles, if you're still watching, am I right in thinking you helped develop the Shuriken or whatever it's called, the metal version that they came out? The guy from 12-foot Ninja, had a signature model with all the modeling and everything. I think Charles actually came up with the body design and everything. But Charles wants to know, and this is a burning question.
Oh, dear.
And this is of particular interest to me as well. Andy, how do you Americans keep such magnificent hair as you grow older?
No, I don't know how. That's it's I don't put the bucket on my head as much.
You don't
days. I don't. I thank God my father Gene, who lived to the age of 92, had a pretty good head of hair, till the end there. So, but I mean, I don't know that all Americans have fared this well. There's a lot of head shaving going on too, man. So, but I for whatever reason, I still got mine. So I feel fortunate. I don't think I would look good with a shaved thing happening.
Man, I've been down that road where I've tried shaving my head because it ain't what it used to be.
You're doing fine, man. That's good.
I just look wrong with a shaved head, but I was always a long hair guy, and I really missed shaking that around on stage. And now I just have glasses.
Thanks for the burning
my
questions.
face.
I'm like, this is going to go one of two ways.
So
it reminded me of my friend I mentioned earlier that worked for Elaine. He was telling me that, even in the UK, he went to an Ingve clinic sometime in the early 90s, and and Ingve's up there. He's just answering questions from the crowd, and somebody goes, "Ingve, have you got a dog?" Ingve goes, "I don't have a dog," and he's taking more questions. And later on, it comes back to the same guys. Well, if you had a dog, what would it be? Which is. So it's up there with what shampoo do you use, I suppose. I just love that somebody asking Ingve if he's got a dog. Well, if you had a dog. I don't know.
I guess
burning questions.
There was one more, folks. We are fast approaching 3 hours. I told you the time goes by.
You told me we might be cranking and rambling. I'm all right with that.
Yeah. I do believe I said if I got an hour out of you, I'd be happy. But
then you're 3 times happy.
3 times happy.
Yay!
So, folks, if you have any questions, now's the time to drop it before I round things up. But
I got to go watch the McCartney show, man. Come on.
Jethro Skull, obviously not his real name, wants to know,
How do you
Andy,
know that?
do you still have the Seymour Duncan convertible you used at NAMM way back? And do you use it much?
Wow, that's what I used at NAMM. That must have been that very first Kramer NAMM that I did in '89. No, but I did have one for a while in the '80s, and I thought that was a tremendous amp.
I've heard this.
You're familiar? They were the little module tubes you'd replace. They had like characteristics. One's a higher gain, one's lower gain, and it was a pretty cool concept that Seymour had, and I loved it. But I think they broke down a lot. Maybe they were problematic over time. But I don't still have it, and you don't see many of them out there anymore, right?
So what was switchable about that? I'm well aware of Bruce Egnator's technology that with the whole module thing, and that he later licensed to Randall and now is licensed to Synergy. And that basically recreates the preamps of various classic amps. What did the Seymour Duncan one do?
This was straight up. It had you had to take a panel off the top of the amp, and I believe there was, depending on the model, 4 or 5. Basically, it was a type of card that had a 12AX7 connected to it that you would dip in, but each of them it was just various stages of gain. Basically, some were higher gain, some were lower gain, and maybe there was other characteristics that they would have had that they might have been named a certain thing. I don't vividly remember, but it was a pretty cool concept, and I got it to work great for me for a while there. Awesome. I was in a band called Brinker when I first moved to Texas in '85, and that was the amp I was using.
Nice. Man, I met Seymour at NAMM. He was doing a signing, and I have seen him on Tone Talk, another great YouTube live podcast, friends of mine. And man, that guy can talk, and he's got some stories. Let me tell you.
Oh, he's a beautiful guy, and he's done some stuff.
Yeah,
I love him a lot. We're still good friends. Yeah, we met at a Dallas guitar show back in about '89, just right at that time period. We played together at one of the gigs, and I recognize that he's a great fingerstyle telly player, and we got on great. So even though I'm a DiMarzio endorser, he and I are very tight friends, and great guy.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
No, fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. There's one last question that somebody has snuck in. Does Andy miss the poser days?
Not really. I mean, anybody would balk at the word poser.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking that
I
myself.
came into that band a really, a pretty seasoned player, so I don't feel like I ever was part poser. But then again, there I was wearing what I wore with my hair the way I wore it. So,
But that's just what
if
people
that's what
wore
you
back
consider
then.
huh?
It's just what people were wearing back then.
It was definitely, and there was lots of hairspray. So yeah, I would never call myself a poser, but if that's what you want to consider me at that time, I get it. So no, whatever your point of that question is, what do you say to that?
He did throw in another one saying, asking if you toned down your leads in Danger Danger. Nuno, however, was all over the place.
Say what now?
He said, did Andy tone his leads down in Danger Danger? Nuno, however, was all over the place.
Turn my leads down. I don't understand what that means.
As in, maybe hold back a little in your playing.
Not really. I think, again, it just whatever was right for the tune, I think Nuno's stuff was incredible, but I would have played what I thought was suited for, the tune or the moment. I mean, I certainly shredded out a bit, like if there was extended stuff at the end of a tune or whatever, and I get to blow more than usual. And I would, I was slipping in all my chromatic stuff and hipper stuff, and maybe the band didn't dig it as much, but I was being me, right? But
yeah,
in any situation I'm in, I'm hoping that it's just right for the moment, whatever it needs to be. Not always about what's great for me. It's you want to do what's right for the tune.
Yep. Well,
try to play very good. That's my goal.
Some guy named Brett has just jumped in to say Andy is the epitome of not a poser. So that's a glowing endorsement from Brett Garsed right there.
No, I appreciate that. Brett's the man. No, and the guy may not have meant anything negative by that or whatever was intended. But yeah, I mean that era was known as a poser area, but there was some really great players. The entire band Winger, which got really much maligned in the States because of the Beavis and Butthead cartoon. The nerd in the show wore a Winger shirt, and they got really drugged through the mud as like, here's what's wrong about this style of music. They were the one band that could play their asses off. You had Rod Morgenstein from the Dregs and Kip, who's a genius, and Reb playing better than anybody. So yeah. For what it's worth, there was some amazing players, posing or not.
So when that era came to an end, I did read something recently with Dee Snider, and he was saying that he went from being, king of the world to all of a sudden having the record companies just saying, yeah, we just don't do that anymore. Do what? Well, the way you sing, the way you dress. And, he was just saying he had to go and work some very ordinary jobs for many years, trying to put food on the table, and would be getting recognized and people saying, hey man, are you? And he's like, nah, people tell me I look like him. And so
that's tough.
So in Danger Danger, you said, the music scene changed.
Yes, very much.
Is that the same kind of thing that the record companies put to you? It's just like, hey, we don't.
There was very much, it was something that Kip told me. He'd gone up to the head of MTV, which at the time that MTV controlled the music industry, because if you weren't on MTV, radio wouldn't add your track. It was very much about that. But it was basically MTV told Kip they brought their new video and said, well, and it told us too. So we don't like your band. We don't don't even bother making videos, because they were already on to the next thing, even though. We had this fan base that didn't even know we had a second record out, because they just were already kind of moving away. No matter what success that might have been there, they were just changing with what they thought needed to be the next thing, which is valid. I mean, I have no problem. And there was so many people that would complain about, Nirvana or whoever, changing, but it needed to happen. Things were getting so overproduced and overpolished. I loved what was happening, but it was a shame again for those bands that were reliant on that exposure, and if you didn't get that, then you didn't get on radio. So it ended a lot careers, unfortunately. For me, it was fun because I just went back to doing what I was doing, session work, going on and making my instrumental records. I wasn't relying on being that guy in that band. It was a great gig, and I loved it was like childhood dream come true. Like I say, doing those tours with Kiss and Alice Cooper, and so some childhood fantasy stuff. But at that time in my life, I'd moved beyond even that being the goal. It's just I just wanted to be a great player. I wanted to get the call to get into Miles Davis's band. I wanted to be in the next Mike Stern, right?
Yep.
So, but again, it's a bit of a head job for a guy like D to be that famous and well known, but then okay, I've got to go do something else. Well, luckily, my something else was with guitar,
Yeah.
and just kept doing it.
Yep. So, question from me: when it comes to session work, are you just doing session work from home with the setup that you have?
Well, yeah, I do quite a bit here, but I had a remote session 2 days ago, meaning at a proper recording studio, which.
Yeah.
Obviously, with COVID, we haven't done as much of. And Dallas used to have a really pretty good scene going on in the 70s, 80s. And I came into the tail end of it and was real busy for a while there. But obviously, there's so much production going on in home studios that it doesn't happen quite as much. But to be in a band with a rhythm section, even if it's just jingle stuff, it's fantastic. So we had a nice 8-hour session and cranked out 16 tracks of stuff, and it's a blast. I really love doing it. I just don't do it as much anymore because the technology is here. They can just email me the track and I can play. But nothing is like being in a room with the guys and playing together. It's just, there's no other thing like it.
Yeah. Yep. We're just saying about, how the record companies, if a certain new style comes in, how, we just don't like your thing anymore. I think they've lost grip of that now just with the way that we have social media and people can be out there making great music in their bedrooms. I see some scary guitar players.
Of course.
Kids just on YouTube.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Is there any young guys out there that you see now that you just go, oh, mind blown?
Oh, yes. And I'm going to blank on the names. His last name is Meter. Josh Meter.
Josh Meter. I'm going to have to check him out.
Look him up. I know it's native Aussie, but he grew up in Holland. Grew up in Holland. He may be back in Sydney now. Josh Meter. And I actually took a lesson with him. I think he's maybe early 20s.
So M-E-T-E-R?
M-E-A-D-E-R. Josh Meter.
M-E-A-D-E-R. Okay. Josh Meter.
Yeah. I've never seen such flawless technique. And so I was watching a podcast that he had done, an interview, and he talked about this particular picking thing that he was into. And he says, yeah, I'm doing lessons on, people hit me up on Instagram. So I just went on Instagram and said, hey, man, I want to hang. So we had a great lesson. And his father was a bassist in a gypsy jazz group. And so when Josh, as a young guy, developed, interest in the guitar, I think his dad gave him, from the age of 7 on, gave him guitar lessons every morning for an hour before school.
Wow.
Like every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so again, if you just check out some of his videos on Instagram, he's probably on YouTube as well, but stunning, just absolutely stunning ability. It's just jaw dropping,
Wow. I've just taken note of that. I'm going to get onto him and see if he can come on for a bit of a chat.
Oh yeah, you should. Absolutely. And again, he may be in Sydney now. Fellow Aussie. So, but yeah, brilliant talent. But again, there's so many guys that I don't know the names of, but there's clearly just, generations of talented guys and girls. They're growing up playing stunning, guitar, and it's inspiring, man. It's just to know that this thing's going to keep living and growing. And there's a guy in Russia,
Max Ostro. Have you come across him?
Yes, I've seen him too, man. Fantastic. Beautiful vibe, right?
I've been trying to get him on for a chat. He's only 16 or something.
That's incredible.
And I put the word out there. Does anybody know Max? And I had somebody said, yeah, I've worked with Max. He's his email address. And I tried getting in touch with him, and he said his English isn't so good. He's not ready for an interview. So I got another guitar YouTuber from Russia to translate for me to say, hey, how about we pre-record it and I can put subtitles and all that? And he just like very politely said, I'm just not ready for interviews. And he looks kind of awkward just to see him. I didn't know if he was putting it on or not.
That's what I love about him, man.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I think so. There's just this beautiful thing about that. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
he's found his place. But yeah,
absolutely. It's mind blowing. But
incredible.
Yeah, Italian guy, Mancuso.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
Plays with his fingers. Yeah,
yeah. No, it's brilliant technique, man. Yeah, beautiful.
Absolutely mind blowing. Andy, we've hit that 3-hour mark, mate. You must be
lovely.
Need a drink or something, so I'm going to wrap things up.
I'm pretty much ready.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a great little chat.
I'm sure to hang with you, man.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's clapping at home.
And thanks to everybody for hanging in, man. That's a long ride to be on the journey for. So hopefully everybody's having fun out there.
The longer podcasts are the ones that get the most views.
That's crazy.
Funny enough, yeah. But I will point out to viewers, if you are watching, that you can get the audio-only versions on your regular podcast sites, but it's better to come and join us live. So subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can see when I go live and all this kinds of stuff.
Always good.
Yeah. Andy, anything you need to plug before we go?
Let's see here. The most recent record I did was called The Redcoats, which is a band with Greg and Matt Bissonette.
Oh, nice.
Who are have a long pedigree of amazing rock and roll history. So that came out a couple months ago, and we're actually doing our first gig together here at the Guitar Sanctuary on August 13th, which people can live stream as well. So that'll be the inaugural Redcoats gig. That'll be fun. And then, as always, you can find me at guitarexperience.net. No E before the X. Guitar Experience. That's my instructional site, where you can come and learn from me after you've tried to learn by ear, of course.
Cool.
Yeah, man. Then come catch me on stage on the Saturdays, and hopefully I'll be on tour next year.
Awesome. There's a lot of thank yous coming through in the chat. I just want to point out one thing.
Thank you, guys.
The video getting around of where Steve Vai sees you in the crowd and goes and puts a guitar over your neck. That is awesome.
That was an incredible thing. And I've known Steve. We met in 1989, but then when I became an Ibanez endorser, then we started, playing together at events. And then as G3 started happening, every time they came to Dallas, they would invite me to come play. So we've been on stage many times together, but that particular show, it was the anniversary of Passion and Warfare. So it's quite a bit of production. So he said, Andy, please come to the gig. Can't invite you to play tonight because there's a lot going on, but come to the show and I'll see you after the gig. Okay, great. And I take my wife and my other friend Sylvia, because Sylvia knows Steve forever because she's in the label business. And it's been about 2.5 hours of the show, right? And so they go off to freshen up in the restroom, and it's the last tune. And Steve comes out with a wireless in the crowd, right? He knows I'm there, but he has no idea where I'm sitting. I'm just kind of in the middle and down the aisle a bit. And he's got Thomas behind him with his tech, and you see it on the videos, like you see him see me, and his face just lights up a certain way, and he instantly takes his guitar. He doesn't even think about it.
Yeah.
He just sees me, and he couldn't have known where I was sitting. And if you look at the video, you see him he's trying to hand me his pick, but I've got my pick ready to go, man. You know what I mean? It's like, because it's one of those things where during his show, he'd had these pre-record segments. Like at some point, Joe Satriani appears on the big screen. It's like, hey, Steve, let's jam or whatever. And they'd have this worked out thing where Joe had pre-recorded some jams in the studio, and they're playing back and forth. I'm like, man, that's so cool. Then later on, John Petrucci shows up. I'm like, oh man, check this out. And I'm going, I want to play. I literally had that thought. So I guess I'd put it out to the universe, because there, sure enough, at the end of the gig, there he is. He sees me, and it's a funny moment. So P.S., my friend and my wife are coming out of the restroom like, what is going on out there? Because all the crowd had gotten up on their chairs to see Steve and I in the middle of the arena there, the crowd, the theater or whatever it was. So they come back, like, what the hell happened? It's like, oh, you'll see it on YouTube, I guess. But it was a wonderful moment. But what a sweet nature thing it was for him to just, without even having a second thought about it, handing me his guitar. And what are you gonna do?
That's awesome.
Try to play something good,
Talk about being put on the spot, huh?
Yeah, no, he's a great guy, great friend, a great mentor for me. A lot of respect, man. A lot of love.
Awesome. Andy, a lot of respect and a lot of love from the people in the chat room coming your way
mutual.
as well, mate. So
thank you, man.
Thank you again for your time. And
you're very welcome. Very welcome.
end screen button, which plays this really cool logo. As I say, thanks for tuning in, folks. Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Thanks, Rick.